Hey, Maze, also, what I'd like to do, I'll answer that, and we'll go
Okay.
to the hands because I really want to hear everyone else.
Yeah.
But just in case people are listening to this recording and they may have tuned out at some point, I want to make sure everyone's got the solution. So I'd like to just cover what I think everyone should be doing, and then we'll go around all the deep discussion.
Yeah.
But I want to make sure if someone's listening to a recording, they're not left disempowered. Firstly, once you recognize that the key technologies um, start at the physical, energy through to hardware, through to software, and everything in between, everybody, I believe, needs to reskill themselves around. There is a massive opportunity to take all of these small businesses and help them transition to AI. Every single business in the world, especially when shit goes down, is going to need somebody to help them with automating their business. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but the trend is the trend. This trend, there is nothing that stops it. There is no slowdown. There is no regulations. There is nothing. You could spend your time protesting against this. It's coming. It's inevitable. As I said, the fight to make it good is decentralization versus centralization. But the centralization is coming. The whole world is moving in that direction. So you need to take that entire ecosystem from, natural gas, oil extraction, semiconductor chips, data centers, software development, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, artificial intelligence, and all of the financialization and things that are going to happen on that. You need to reskill into either teaching that, being a part of the ecosystem, whatever your skills are, make that transition. You need to make as much money as you possibly can around that ecosystem. You then need to, if we are to make change, we then need to boycott the system. And that's the decentralization versus centralization. The way we do that is, and I know this is very hard because some people are so far down the system, you need to boycott debt as much as possible. Whether it's, whatever you need to do to, and I know that's hard for some, but I'm just saying, if you're in a position to do that, you need to boycott debt. You then, again, not financial advice, but all I can tell is tell you what I think others are doing and what I'm doing. You then need to save in Bitcoin. You need to learn self-custody. You need to learn how to store it on your own. Gold will be here if you haven't bought into the Bitcoin. I believe that Bitcoin, because it's higher risk, will outperform gold. But if you haven't bought into the Bitcoin story, I think you need to at least hedge some of your gold, if you're mainly gold, into Bitcoin. And if you've already bought into the Bitcoin story and you can handle it, and you don't just speculate on price and you don't get distracted, then you need to save in Bitcoin and reposition your gold Bitcoin portfolio accordingly. If you are up for it, and I can't give you advice on this, you need to understand what stocks are going to prevail from this. And so as you invest, and I think keep it simple, gold and Bitcoin first, personally. Personally, I think Bitcoin is way more important than gold, but gold is way lower risk. Then if you've got wealth, you need to get a diversified portfolio around what I just talked about. I believe that the Middle East is going to be high growth. I think China and the global South are going to be reinvested in over a long-term time frame. And I think America is going to become a technocracy. And I don't know what the European plan is. They look like they're actually being sacrificed. And the only plan for Europe is to work with BRICS, but they've already got leaders that are pushing out the narrative that Putin is Hitler to sacrifice them for the military-industrial complex. So you need to decide where you want to be. There will be a massive wealth redistribution around you, making sure you're in the right sector at the right place. If you're in energy, be careful as well, because Trump is pushing down the price of oil, which is a strategic issue for the drill baby drill mission, because they may be a situation where it can no longer profitably do it. But I believe that because Trump is in bed with OPEC Plus, which it consists of Putin and MBS and all the others, I think that part will be okay because it's too strategically important. Right. Now, once you have boycotted debt, saved in Bitcoin, repositioned your career around the growth sectors and the growth areas, decided where you want to live, how you want to live, made those big decisions with your family. These are major decisions. I know people are not just going to move country. It's not, it's not like that. There'll be opportunities in every country, but you've got to reposition around them. Then spend local. Do not purchase wherever you can from Amazon, from the large global institutions. Boycott the military industrial complex. Don't allow your pension to fund this war machine. Don't allow them to, do wherever you can, look after your community. You want your community to be as safe as possible. That means that you need economic power within your community. The more economic power you have within your community, the better you'll be able to weather the storm. This disproportionately, again, harms those that are in the areas that have been most affected, with the most amount of debt, with the most amount of drug addiction, and the people that are absolutely destroyed. If you are in a position of wealth, then you may need to support people, whatever's your right for you, but most people are trying to support themselves, and you need to look after yourself, then your community, and then maybe you can go further down. But if at all possible, try and take your skills in decentralization, build decentralized technology, support the communities that are building, peer-to-peer electronic systems, anything that works without middlemen, that is built upon decentralized servers, open source code, the cypherpunk vision that Bitcoin was created from. Make sure you are involving yourself in how do we decentralize social media? How do we decentralize artificial intelligence? How do we continue decentralizing money and supporting new adoption of that? So those are all I just want to make sure that everybody is not disempowered, because I really believe the world that we enter in the next 10 years will be unrecognizable, and there will be a massive wealth redistribution. And those that understand this message and make the moves as soon as possible and sit down with their loved ones, sit down with their family. Maybe you've got to get them to listen to this space. Maybe there's someone else that can communicate the message that resonates more with them. But you've got to make moves. You've got to make changes, because we are actually alive at one of the craziest times. And that's either going to be the best time for you or the worst time for you. It is not going to be any in between. And you need to reposition yourself accordingly.
I was just gonna say, Simon, man, that was a great breakdown on the global geopolitics of what Trump's pulling down. I've been saying this for months. You can ask Mays. I came at it from a different perspective, and I kind of reached the same conclusion you did with the carbon capturing and the carbon sequestration with the energy grid and what's going on in America and Alaska. They're just shipping up all our resources over to Japan, China, and they're stripping our state right now for the exact same thing that you're talking about. They're going to make America rich, but Americans poor, and that's what I'm fighting for right now. So I'm with you on this 100%. But I had a question when you were talking about China and the fight between them. To me, it's really hard to understand that when their poverty wage for someone in poverty in China is like $1. So when they can just say, all right, half of our people aren't in poverty, and you're looking at the fact that, well, they're only making $1 a day to get you out of poverty in China. How does that affect the workflow, like for the jobs or the manufacturing, if we could bring it over here, if our wages are so high compared to other countries? Is there a workaround, or how, I don't understand how we can make cheaper products if our wages are continuously growing while the rest of the world is 30-40 bucks behind us,
Yeah,
per
the
day.
answer is you can't. A $1,000 iPhone made in China is $20,000 made in America. That's the reality. So the only things that they're going to bring on shore is the things that they don't want to be bought from China, because they want to create that hub within China, and they're willing to pay more for it. And
So that's sort of So would you say that that sort of encourages my thought process that we're just going to lose choices? You know, like we have 50 TVs now, we're going to be able to choose from two.
Yeah, I mean, look, the end game is, again, this is a fight between centralization and decentralization. Centralization wants America on a stablecoin universal basic income with X giving us freedom of speech but not freedom of reach, so that it can use everything we're telling to build a perfect social credit score, so that when they need you to have a universal basic income, they can tell you based upon whether you bow down to their agenda what your interest rate will be. That's the future of the centralized vision of America that Trump and Elon are building, dressing it up as MAGA. Europe, we've got a worse vision, which is the European Central Bank's going to control everything, and it's going to be a full-blown surveillance state. But in the end, they merge into the same thing, because the technology that's being beta tested in the Middle East on Gaza right now is the same technology that all of our data is being used to pick people to commit a genocide and kill in order to get the resources that they need and that they want. We are moving to that one world government under one world currency based upon a technocracy, and breaking everything up to blocks makes that easier to manage. Now, what is the fight? What is the resistance? It's not Trump versus Harris. It's not Republican versus Democrat. It's not American versus European. It's not pro-Israeli versus pro-Palestinian. It's not communism versus capitalism. It's not, you know, it's not universal basic income versus free markets. It's decentralization versus centralization. We need to fight back with decentralized money. We need to boycott the system. We need to build decentralized AI, decentralized social media, decentralized identities. And because you know what happened with Bitcoin? They couldn't beat us, so they joined us. Do you know what resources BlackRock put in order to try and wreck and to get into Bitcoin once they realized they couldn't beat us? In 2022, BlackRock, the Federal Reserve, and the SEC executed a covert mission called Operation Choke Point 2.0. In Operation Choke Point 2.0, Biden went over, but firstly, the NATO expansion was accelerated in order to get Putin to invade Ukraine. That was the asset stripping of the rare earth minerals. That was the weakening of Europe. That was the blowing up of Nord Stream pipeline so that Europe would become a vassal state for central bank digital currencies. Um, then what did they do? Biden went over and sat down with MBS and said, can you flood the market with oil because Americans are getting wiped out here through inflation? MBS decided to not do that. He decided to push the price of oil up. That created 9% inflation within America, which translated into 900% inflation within Zimbabwe. That was then used to wipe out the banks that they needed to bank. The Federal Reserve said everybody is allowed a new loan. And so they created a new tool. But there's only three banks that are not allowed this loan: Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Silvergate. Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Silvergate had a network on a blockchain that plugged together all of the different 24/7 movement of fiat currency, and they serviced all of the crypto exchanges. There was only one person that got a meeting with Gary Gensler at the SEC, and that was Sam Bankman-Fried. Sam Bankman-Fried, who was laundering money over to Ukraine through his exchanges, and was able to get a meeting with the SEC that was writing the regulations for our sector, was the only person that was able to meet with the SEC.
He just got a full pardon.
Oh, I
Did you
think
know
that's
that?
fake news. I don't know if you did. I think that's fake news.
Oh, it is?
I think it's
Okay,
fake
okay.
news. Yeah, it was an April Fool's, I think.
Oh, okay. Damn
Yeah,
it. I fell for a lot of those.
yeah.
Anyway, go ahead.
What else happened? Alex Majinski, the co-founder of Celsius, that also had Daniel Leone, who is in Israel, and his wife, who works for head of social media of the IDF in Israel. And Alex Majinski, the person that was killing Lebanese children for the IDF, he was able to create Celsius, which was a multi-billion-dollar Ponzi scheme. I ended up one of the largest creditors in that company because I invested in the shares, not knowing that it was a Mossad operation. What happened? 35,000 ETH were hacked from that exchange. That exchange was hacked by a company called Banker DAO. As long as all the fraud, he also did a bunch of fraud. But who was Banker DAO? Banker DAO, the shareholders were the niece and nephew of President Netanyahu, and the co-founder and all the founders that got exile in Israel have currently got an AI startup where their largest customer is the Prime Minister's Office of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu. They were also the same people that pushed out press in order to wipe out UNRWA and make sure that the world stopped investing in UNRWA to prevent Palestinians having their right to return. Those were the two companies that created the ginormous collapse of the market. What was the net result? They wiped out 3 banks. Those 3 banks, how did those banks get wiped out? I was on a space with Mario when a gentleman called Peter Thiel came up to the stage and said everybody needs to withdraw their money from Silicon Valley Bank right now. They withdrew their money from Silicon Valley Bank. That crashed the bond market, which the Federal Reserve was paying almost 0% interest treasuries. And that bank had to then sell their treasuries, and then selling their treasuries created a systemic risk in the entire banking system. Then Bill Ackman came up to a space that I was on with Mario, and Bill Ackman said, hey, we'll buy the bank for free as long as the FDIC guarantees all the banks. FDIC guaranteed all the banks with the exception of those 3 banks. Those 3 banks were wiped out by Mossad and the CIA. And then from there, BlackRock said, oh, guess what? We're going to create a Bitcoin ETF. So are you, Fidelity. So was everybody else. And so all of the large financial institutions got to create a Bitcoin ETF. Then all of a sudden, Bank of New York Mellon was approved in order to custody the Bitcoin. The Coinbase was able to go public. That was from an earlier region. And the banks then suddenly got a regime change within America. Suddenly, Biden was wiped out, Harris was installed, and Trump had 2 assassination attempts. Those 2 assassination attempts then led to Trump winning and everybody putting bandages on their ear in solidarity for Trump. From there, we got the deregulation environment that was needed. The Bitcoin ETF then was used by Larry Fink in order to get every single financial institution into Bitcoin because he told them we can no longer ignore this. And so now every single bank, every single financial institution has Bitcoin. The central banks started buying gold like crazy, pushing up the price of gold to new all-time highs. That was the precursor. Now Trump gets in power. Trump says, I'm going to deliver to you peace. Every American, every European, including myself, was so disgusted at the amount of money that was being sent to the military industrial complex to commit genocide while we watched on our phones babies being killed every day. We were so disgusted that we said, look, Genocide Joe, Holocaust Harris, we can't take this anymore. We want the man of peace. The man of peace said in day 1, within 24 hours, there will be no war between Ukraine and Russia. Then he said, once he got into power, I need 100 days to achieve it. Then he said there will be a ceasefire, and all of the wars started to negotiate towards ending the strategic tension between Iran and Israel. Now suddenly Iran allows Hezbollah leadership to be taken out, Hamas leadership to be taken out, all of the Axis to be decapitated, while Israel blows up 3,000 pages showing and demonstrating, hey bitches, if you buy our technology in the future, we can just blow up your balls, you know? World, are you watching? We're testing out all of this technology across the region. And then suddenly the ceasefire happens and Trump's known as, I'm the guy of peace. Everybody says, you're the guy of peace. He then says, yeah, but We're now going to do what Adolf Hitler did. We're going to expand. We're going to take over Greenland. We're going to take over Canada. We're going to take over Mexico. We're going to create the Gulf of America. And MAGA said, we're winning. We're winning. And then suddenly he said, Doge, Elon, you take out USAID and we're going to expose the military industrial complex. We're going to leave parts of the JFK files. We're going to leave parts of the, oh, where's the Epstein files? Oh, yeah, those people are still around. We're just going to do the people that are already dead. And everyone's going to say, USA, USA, we're winning, we're winning, we're winning. He's taking on the deep state. And meanwhile, we end up where we are today, Liberation Day, which is a strategic mission by the deep state in order to draw the map into different regions and to wipe out middle class businesses, hand them over to the large global financial institutions. And guess what? All of the financial institutions have Bitcoin. All of the central banks have gold. And now we can create a strategic realignment of capital all around the world. And that's what you're witnessing right in front of you. And we're going to do it in a way that nobody understands. So no financial analyst in the world is going to believe that conspiratorial shit that you just talked about, Simon. You're a conspiracy theorist. You're an anti-Semite. You're a self-hating Jew. Why would we listen to you? And they're all trying to figure out what's Trump's 65D chess move, when the reality is Trump's bought and paid for, just as every other politician has always been, because it was never about democracy. It was about the Federal Reserve that is a mafia organization that is wiping out middle class Americans, middle class Europeans, exporting that globally and creating the largest wealth transfer the world has ever seen, until you are so broke, so mentally destroyed, as suicides are happening at the fastest rate. Mental depressions, mental disorders, birth rates down, inflation up, people can't afford anything, because then you will be transitioned to a universal basic income. And we need to fight back, not with what we're fighting back. Divide and conquer, distraction, hate each other, believe that it's false narratives. It's decentralization versus centralization. We won it with money, and now they need Bitcoin in order to transition to this new world. So you need to do the same. If you want to know who controls the world, look at what they're actually spending their money on, and you need to position yourself accordingly. They want you to buy US treasuries. They want you to buy US stocks, because they're being dumped right now at a rate that is accelerated. And guess what? Warren Buffett knew the whole freaking thing was happening. Berkshire Hathaway dumped all of its stocks over the last 2 years. They knew what was happening. Gold was going up. CBDCs, central banks were accumulating it. Financial institutions were getting into Bitcoin. Those in the know, the Warren Buffetts, the Berkshire Hathaways, they were selling their stocks into strength.
Wow.
You just got to do the opposite of what everybody's saying.
Well, I'm glad that you brought up solutions, because I do want people to be able to, begin pondering ways and alternatives. Because the more we participate in these systems and lock ourselves into this decline and centralization, it is going to be very difficult to have alternatives. And so I would say that the point would be to kind of get people to the point, like, they would have no choice other than to accept, universal basic income and stuff like that. Like, that's kind of the direction that we're headed in. But most people at this point, they're I think he's just a great salesman, because I mean, he has people like just really believing in this direction without, the like, it just, to me, I'm just looking around, like, the reason why they keep using this whole 56D chess is because it doesn't make sense, and so they're just telling you to accept it. And that's the problem I have. Like,
Trust the plan.
just, yeah, what plan? That's what I've been asking. Like, tell me the freaking plan. But that's
Yeah.
and yeah, Zillion, I was actually going to come to you. I wanted to welcome you. Thanks for being patient. What's your take on everything? Jump in.
Yeah. Thank you, Maze. I think that the people are looking for, there is such a dislocation of narratives depending on where you get your information from, that really people are looking to kind of develop some type of thesis around what's happening, and trying to kind of predict their next day-to-day move. Um, and and right now that we're talking about, making chess moves against China, I see that there is a lot of misunderstanding from the general public of what's going on here from a Chinese perspective. What can China do, and the impact of what's happening here on the next move, right? I mean, I spent a lot of time on the in the crypto trenches, simply because I'm developing something to address that market. But and I see that people are very hopeful and completely disconnected. I mean, this what's happening right now is a major macro event and geopolitical event at the same time, and it looks to me, and definitely when I see Simon holding big spaces, there is something that breaks. It's a sign for me that we are in a crisis mode, and yeah, not because Simon is a negative person, but because he sees basically his theory on the world playing out, and yeah, that's what it is. But for me, look, I want to bring my added value into things. My personal experience, I lived in Hong Kong for 11 years, and that's what I did most of my career. And I think
Oh,
that
I lived in Hong
that
Kong as
on
well. Did you know?
yeah, I know you did. Uh, And so, look, I think that the Americans don't appreciate how much the Chinese have a strong hand here, simply because they have developed quite the ability to dominate the industrial world, literally, and the production. Because people don't go to China just because of cost. China is not Vietnam, is not other places where you're competing on cost. China today competes on industrial know-how. And the ability to produce, etc. So obviously that's a long learning curve. That's a slow moving type of environment, and you need some time to develop that or to move it and to shift it around. As you can see, Chinese companies, when there is any trade barrier, etc., they just shift their own infrastructure that they have in China to another country, but they still own the industrial complex, right? So that's important to note. So I think that the effects of what's happening here on this escalation of tariffs is completely underplayed and underappreciated, and I think it's going to have some very big consequences, especially for small and medium businesses, like Simon said, because we have developed, and the world has developed into industry of drop shippers. Those are wiped out completely now, simply because they live on a pre-sale type of model. So they have already sold the goods for 50% of the price. They usually have very low treasury in terms of being able to hedge these type of situations. So they're completely wiped out, and their customers are gonna basically suffer because they paid for something that will never arrive simply because they cannot pay for it. And especially at critical size. I mean, for drop shippers that sell 1,000, 5,000 pieces a day, etc. And that's a lot of people. I mean, that's a lot of a big network of people. That's one thing. The second thing is I think this is going to escalate, and it's going to escalate in a very bad way, because I think next move, obviously, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that the next move will be basically a show force of selling a little bit of bonds, see how that will affect the overall story. Obviously, Chinese have a lot of exposure to the U.S. bond market, and the other thing is that China is one man takes a decision, right? I mean, there is no debate here. The whole society can basically kind of wait out and have one play, right? And there is no second opinion. There is one opinion, and that's the one that matters. So this whole situation is underappreciated. We still need to see what is gonna break. Obviously, I'll bring back the old famous Carl Icahn and his relationship with the ETFs and BlackRock, and how he talks about the velocity of this move, of this next thing that will break. And I think we'll reach that point. I invite you all to see his argument when he argued with Larry in on the debate around how BlackRock basically is going to contribute to the next collapse. And yeah, so
Can I
people,
just add something to
sorry.
that real quick, Zillion? Just knowing, like, if you look at the Belt and Road Initiative, that essentially would put China as kind of the monopoly in trade, right? And then you have IMEC, which is coming in, which also is probably the reason for the United States unconditional support, in addition to obviously the partnerships with tech and cybercrime and all that stuff at the global level. But so now with this new trade route from India, going through Israel and kind of connecting over to Greece and Europe. There's that aspect of it that I think is going to shift. And it's more about, they're trying to kind of like, who's going to call the shots, I think, between China and the United States. It seems like there's that tug of war. It's no longer about like I don't know, I just see that shift happening as well. And I think that there's also potential for trade route ambitions as it relates to Greenland, as well as the resources. But I just wanted to kind of throw that out and see what your take is, if you could include that in your assessment.
Yeah, I just find it crazy that right now where we're sitting, this S&P 500 sell-off rivals the March 2020 COVID crash. It's the exact same strength of this sell-off. And now everyone is sitting here wondering, so are we going to repeat 2020 or are we going to repeat 2008? I think it really just comes down to that. A week from now, a month from now, maybe the Trump administration takes a massive pivot. Maybe they're able to find a lot of negotiation and common ground and cancel some of these more odious tariffs. But if they don't, and if they stick to this large remaking of whole swaths of U.S. economy, I think we're in for a recession, period. I think we have a version of 2008 that we're looking at. You're talking about redoing trade on a global scale. That's not just some easy flip of the switch. Not at all. We just heard, almost an hour of anecdotal stories of, the different U.S. industries that are going to get screwed, or are already getting screwed right now. That's already happening. Your costs are going up. Small and medium-sized businesses are having to figure out, like, well, do I just pass on 20%, 30%, 50% more costs onto my customers, or I shut down? It's literally that, because you can't fire enough workers when your margins are already slim or razor thin. So yeah, I think we have two paths. Unfortunately, we could see a repeat of 2020 with a quick recovery, or it's 2008.
Thanks, Matt. Do you want to respond to that, Simon?
I agree with everything that was just said there. And by design, But I tell you what, there is no reversing this. Whichever direction, reversing this is not an option. So we have to face what we have today. The old model before this tariff shock was a disaster. The new model before this tariff shock, after this tariff shock, was the exact type of shock that the world needed, and only Trump was going to be able to deliver that. So I've said a lot of bad things, but I just think people need to understand that the old model was taking us to World War III. This new model is splitting us up into blocks, and everybody just needs to reposition around what they think the world looks like over the next 10 years. That is better than World War III. And so, this day will be remembered. But yeah, we are, I give it 100% chance we move into recession. Money is going out of the dollar into the Swiss franc. The Swiss franc went into negative yield. The Credit Suisse was calling the Federal Reserve because they're concerned about European banks right now. So there is a 2008 style scenario that could happen. It may be avoided. It may not be part of the plan. If it happens, it's for a reason. It's because it's allowed to happen. Remember, 2008 was BlackRock's. They were managing both the data that the Federal Reserve was using and Treasury were using. So they were controlling both fiscal and monetary policy with their data. and they decided which banks go down, which ones go up, and that was all things. So I completely agree that we are moving to recession, and we could get some style of systemic risk in the credit system. I'm not sure exactly where it will come from, but we'll know about it soon. And so everyone needs to reposition around the industries that will be recession proof, because all of the money is going into AI, all of the money is going into robotics, all the money's going into energy, all the money is going into commodities, Bitcoin, gold, and all of the technology around cryptocurrency, central bank digital currencies. Anywhere along that ecosystem, you'll be in boom territory. Anywhere else, it's going to be a hustle.
You know what, Simon? What I'm seeing, I'll let you respond in 1 second, and maybe you can answer this too. What I'm seeing, everybody, right, just kind of looking and getting a pulse check of the people that are, in the MAGA camp and that are cheering this on, are really thinking that there's going to be some sort of offset with these tax cuts. But I really hope that we cover that piece of it, because I think that that's like an okey doke. I mean, the tax cuts really do affect, like, maybe it's going to affect like the very top 1% of earners, and then really the bottom is going to absorb this. And I think that right now I'm worried about the people who barely even make it from paycheck to paycheck. How are they going to invest in anything? How are they going to safeguard themselves? Like, and this is a majority of Americans right now, I think, are not even in the know of like how this is going to impact them. I'm really concerned about that. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Matt,
you
and then
got to you got to
so that,
invest
yes.
your labor.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Uh,
Either one, yeah. I didn't know I was gonna. Matt wanted to respond to you anyway, and then when he kicks it back to you, you can add to that. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. Let me. I'll quickly answer that tax question there. You're right. I think a lot of Americans would be shocked to learn that no, this is trying to extend the previous existing tax cuts from the first Trump administration. A lot of people aren't going to notice any difference on their next tax bill because they're just trying to extend what was already there in the first place. And then a broader point. Um, like the US still right now does not have a balanced budget. We spend way more than we take in, way more than we take in. So this idea that uh, I agree with you 100%, Simon. Like you need to go long hard assets. You need to stay long gold, Bitcoin, anything that can't be debased. Because if if you think that there's any part of this that the U.S. government is getting wrong, the only solution they ever have at their disposal is to paper over the problem. They're going to spin up the money printer and make whomever that needs to. They're going to make them whole and debase your currency. It is the 100% guarantee every single time because they spend more money than they take in. So there's no fiscal responsibility here. There's no illusion uh, your dollar isn't going to be worth less next year, 5 years, 10 years. So we could easily have a lost decade in Nasdaq and S&P 500 while we watch whole swaths of the U.S. economy get remade post tariffs. That could easily happen where the indexes largely just kind of trade uh, sideways more or less for the next 5 years, 10 years. But look what gold did in 2000 through 2010, up only from 2 trillion to 10 trillion. Look what other hard assets did. Look at housing, which is not a perfect hard asset, but you get the idea. It's a limited supply. You can only build so much so fast. Everything that was hard asset went up only in 2000s. And if you sat in NASDAQ from 2001 to 2011, you barely broke even.
yeah, Mark. What I'd also say is that I think that's sound advice for those that have capital. Most people don't have capital; they've only got labor, because most people are in deep debt and they're not even in a position to invest. You need to reposition your labor to the ecosystems that are going to boom. Where all the capital is being invested, you need to make sure your labor is in front of the capital. Whether it's you as a freelance consultant, whether it's you taking your skills and making sure it's in the right sector. So I think we got a hot mic. I think it's Zillan. Um, yeah, and so you got to reposition your labor if you don't have capital to be in front of where all the investments are being made. There is a possibility that we're dealing with peak centralization here. So the Fed could move into a QE program. You could get your tax. I think you will get your tax reform. Those that get salaries less than 150,000. That was a promise of the administration. As shit gets really bad, they might fulfill that promise, and I hope they do. You should hold your politicians to account to give that tax reform because that was a promise. And you know that. But remember also, they could do QE, they could do the repositioning of the markets. You don't know is the point because we're dealing with peak centralization. It's a few people that are making these decisions, and I personally believe it's going to go all the way to the dividing of the world. But you don't know, so that's what I'm kind of trying to say there. Whether we enter into a Fed stimulus QE, lower rates environment, then remember the whole administration has positioned themselves around Bitcoin. All the central banks have positioned themselves around gold, and the entire world capital has positioned themselves around energy, robotics, and artificial intelligence. So just think about that. It's a bit more. Um, and there was one more thing that I wanted to say, but I've forgotten.
Was it deficit spending or?
Yeah, no, I think you'll get your tax break. So that could happen. Oh, and yes, the other is remember the stimulus. If you get a stimulus that doesn't come from the Federal Reserve, it will be a way of getting adoption for a stable coin. So Elon will do a stimulus through a stable coin, or Trump will do a stimulus through a stable coin. And the stable coin will be a way of getting 350 million Americans to download a wallet and opt in to the social credit score that they're currently building. So you may get a stimulus, and that's why you got to go with what's happening. You got to recognize. I personally believe there's no fighting this. Nothing stops this train from here. I think it's wasted energy protesting against it. I think you've got to reposition yourself in front of it, and we've got to manage a controlled demolition of the old system of centralization with decentralization. And we, the people, decide. I do want you to remember that for the last 18 months, you were meant to believe that what was happening in Palestine was acceptable to have a genocide. And we, the people, decided that that's not acceptable. The people that were being genocided shared the videos. On social, we made sure that the governments didn't get away with what they wanted to get away with. And although it doesn't look like a victory because it's still being,
It's not a
it's
victory.
definitely,
That's
it's
why.
definitely, it's definitely not a victory but Netanyahu did not win, and the CIA did not beat Russia. The system is being split up, and Trump was installed. Trump went from "you're not allowed to be here" to "you are about to be here," and that was because Russia won the war, which wasn't part of the plan, and Netanyahu lost
Russia
again,
won what?
didn't win.
Russia won what war?
Well, the war between America and Russia to weaken Europe.
The war between America and Russia was won by Russia. When did that happen?
Right now,
Ukraine,
No,
sir. I hope this answered your.
yeah, Ukraine. Yes, I'm aware of Ukraine. Yes, he didn't mention Ukraine, so I didn't know what he was talking about.
Yeah, like via proxy, they were.
Okay, yes. That in that sense, absolutely. I'm still so confused about what you're saying about Netanyahu. How
yeah,
did
you'd probably have to go back to the recording, but I
Yeah.
explained I explained what was happening in the region.
Okay, I'm sorry if I missed that. I'm confused because Trump so the whole thing with Gaza, like I mean, I'm not in here. I was just in here to like listen to some of the overall broader stuff you're saying is really interesting, and I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think we do need to definitely like adjust. I don't think protesting this is not like worth our time. It absolutely is because what's happening now, it may be unprecedented. It may be a course we can't reverse. And that all may be true. I'm not a stock and like global economy expert by any means at all, but I do follow politics, and I have been like sort of deeply immersed in this for about the last decade. Ever since Trump came onto the scene, I just was like, all right, it's time to not be like, I'm not into politics anymore because we can't afford to do that. So look, like I just think that what happened with Gaza seemed to be very much an op where, because Trump was the one who met with Kislyak in the Oval Office to get the intel that led to that October 7th attack, and because once they shared that, he gave it to the Russians, they shared it with Iran, they gave it to Hamas, and they were the ones who carried out the attack on October 7th. We had Trump having basically these meetings with world leaders when he was not president. He was meeting with Vladimir Putin. He was meeting with, people at Mar-a-Lago. It was very much clear that they were trying to drive a wedge into the Democratic Party, and they absolutely succeeded 1,000%. Everybody said there were people protesting. They were calling Kamala. They were saying Kamala Harris is responsible for genocide, and I was like, I don't know how many leaps these people are making at once, but I'm not following you. I don't understand. I'm like, I know what's going on in Gaza, and I think it's horrifying. It's disgusting, and there's no defending any of it. But nobody's pro genocide on the Democratic side. I was like, Trump actually was responsible for a genocide here when when he sabotaged our COVID response and got over 1 million Americans killed, at least 700,000 of which have been found to be
Well,
preventable.
wait
So
a
I
minute.
don't know
Well,
what
hold on.
that's all what happened. And when he's the one who actually
All right,
caused inflation to then come
let me
around.
have a go. Do you want?
Okay.
Let me have
Go
a go.
ahead.
Yeah,
Okay.
wait. One problem there. Come on, it was Trump who fast tracked war
No,
Project
you're
Warp Speed.
falling
He
you're
had
falling for the
That
psyop.
was
he
that
had
was
You're,
Trump.
he had nothing to do with that. He sabotaged it all. I have a thread on it if you want to check it out.
let
I'm happy to
me
give it
let
to you.
me.
Okay,
But I'm
hold
not
on,
going to
hold on.
debate
So
this.
Andrew, I just want to calm
Yeah,
your energy down because everyone's here to learn from each other. No, like nobody's resisting what you're saying. Just allow it to flow, right? Like let them respond.
yeah. I'm
No, it's
sorry.
all good.
I
It's all good.
apologize.
We're here to swap data. Nobody knows it all. It's just kind of,
That's very much
okay.
true.
So yeah, let him respond real quick and
I
yeah.
appreciate it. Go ahead.
All right, let me have a go. So
Sure.
this is bipartisan genocide. Israel is a U.S. foreign policy, not from the American government, from the deep state of America, from the Federal Reserve, the CIA, MI6, Bank of England, Mossad. That's what Israel is. It was a mechanism
Mhm.
for ethnically cleansing the Palestinians, creating carnage in the region, and creating making sure that America could be the global hegemon that led to the petrodollar, all of that stuff. That was a American policy. It came from Britain. It was transitioned over to America, and genocide has been the global model of the mafia that runs the deep state. Okay, politicians are installed in order to fulfill strategic goals. Genocide Joe, Holocaust Harris, and Trump were all a part of that. Now, what happened?
You calling them Genocide Joe and Holocaust Harris is just utter insanity,
Okay,
Yeah,
dude. I mean,
that
I don't
well,
know
yeah.
what
they
you're
did
doing.
the
People are getting
genocide, and
hyperbolic on
so
both
did
sides
Trump.
here.
Okay,
They
hold
did
on,
not
guys. Hold on,
commit
guys.
genocide. There's no way for a
Andrew,
vice president to have any control over a genocide in another
Andrew,
country. That's just not
Andrew.
how it
I
works.
think
Yes,
overall,
yes, they
like,
did. So they did it in two ways.
No,
Yes,
they
they did.
didn't.
They
They
did it in
didn't,
two ways.
Simon. You're
okay,
perpetuating a
one
I'll tell
disinformation
you
second.
how
effort,
they
Sean.
did it.
Okay, hold on. Look, Andrew, just let him finish. I think so I think that Andrew has a problem with those individualized insults that Trump
Okay.
likes to use. So let's just say Trump. I mean, but at the end of the day, I think what we saw, it happened under that administration, and it was, even though, like, just don't, like, I don't know. Let's not get caught up on the details. We have a bigger picture here, Andrew. Uh-oh, I think he left.
Yeah,
Anyway, go ahead.
Oh shoot.
it's
I
bipartisan.
send the invite.
Again, it's bipartisan. And how did America engage in it? Well, firstly, they veto voted every ceasefire and peace in the United Nations. That was done under the Trump administration, under Biden. So that was been every single
Obama.
year
Yep.
they veto
Bush.
voted.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I just can't believe it. Like
But
the
see that. But
polarity around.
Simon, to be fair,
Go ahead.
then I do agree with you that the support of Israel has been bipartisan for decades, decades and decades. So then it is, to Steelman Andrew's point, it's unfair to call, like, whatever you said, a genocide, a
Okay,
Kamala
is it better if
genocide.
I say
But that's not.
terrorist if I say terrorist Trump at the same time? Then you happy?
No, I think it's both. I think it's both disingenuous.
Okay,
I
but
think the
Biden,
U.S. just
Harris, and
has
Trump
a
were all involved in this
This
genocide.
is so
bigger than that,
beyond
decades and decades.
partisanship,
Yeah,
Matt.
right.
Listen, guys, I just want you to know right now that the whole idea that one side is more of this than the other, like the margins have been exploited, okay? And they have people nitpicking over surface level issues when the broader, strategic objectives are being accomplished despite who's in office, what administration's been in office. It's all been advanced. That's the point. So it doesn't even matter. Fuck both sides right now. I'll just say that I am all about making America great again. Now, if that's with Trump or that's without Trump, it is really the people. The people need to come together and to be able to have dialogue, which is what's been missing. It's because we've been fractured into all these different subgroups and identities that we're, up here battling for. And I think right now is just saying, all of it has been advanced to where we are now, and I think every administration's been a part of it. They laid foundations and stepping stones in one way or another, you know in one way or another, and here we are.
Yeah. So
So
what I believe
coming from
happened
the.
again. I want to
Oh,
get away
go
from
ahead, Simon.
partisanship because it's such a psyop and a distraction. And it's not going to help you. We're going to start talking about what you need to do, and we're going to start talking about whether Trump or Harris was right. Um, the I personally believe that October the 7th was an intelligence operation. And I think Chinese intelligence, Russian intelligence, American intelligence, Israeli intelligence, and Iranian intelligence, and Saudi and Emirati intelligence all knew it was going to happen. It was there in order to settle where the world was headed next and what the future of the region was. So they allowed October the 7th to happen. Israel wanted it because they wanted to ethnically cleanse the Palestinians. And Iran wanted it to find out whether there could be a solution for the Palestinian cause once and for all. And America wanted it because they profit from strategic tension in the region. They get to sell more equipment, and they get to profit from genocide, which has been the long-term British Empire and American Empire strategy for centuries. Um, they also get to decide where capital is going to flow afterwards. And so October the 7th was a mission, and it said, Israel, you either ethnically cleanse and genocide the Palestinians completely, or you've lost. And you've got until the Trump administration to achieve that goal. They didn't win. The Palestinians are still there. The humanitarian, again, I'm talking about my geopolitical hat. Now put on my humanitarian hat, and Mays will vouch for me. I'll be telling you how this was the most disgusting thing in the world that has made me a different human, having to watch what we've seen. So I'm not wearing my humanitarian hat right now. I'm wearing my geopolitical hat, which is trying to take out the emotion, how I actually feel about what happened there. But the mission was you have until the Trump administration to ethnically cleanse and genocide the Palestinians, and you will be the power in the region. If you don't achieve that goal, then we're going to hand over the region to the Saudis, the Emiratis, the Gulf, and Israel and Iran are going to be regime changed to a certain degree. I believe Iran has already negotiated a deal to drop the axes, normalize, and they're meeting this Saturday, and there's going to be a nuclear deal. This is more speculative, but I believe that Israel will need to sign up to the same nuclear deal, and disclose the weapons that they stole from America when they killed JFK in order to get the weapons of mass destruction that they currently have in Israel. I believe that there's going to be a normalization. There's going to be a regime change. Netanyahu's going to be out. He's probably going to go to Hungary, which is where he just visited. He looked like a defeated man in the Trump administration. For the first time, Trump looked more powerful than Netanyahu. The previous meeting, Netanyahu looked more powerful than Trump. The military industrial complex has decided that Israel is no longer useful, and the region gets to go into peace, and Trump gets to be the hero, and say that he was the guy that solved the Middle East problems and gets his Nobel Peace Prize. That is what I think is going to happen. What I think should happen is completely different. But I think Israel, the GCC, Iran, they've all put together their deal. And because they have so much capital, they're allowed to be a power broker in the region. And all of those, there is right now strategic escalation to give Israel as much negotiation power because they're economically decimated. Their reputation is completely through the floor. And America, the world has figured out that America is part of this and it's US foreign policy. And everyone's asking questions around the power structure of the world. Does Israel control America? Does America control Israel? And so, therefore, Israel is no longer useful to the military industrial complex. It is no longer profitable. And so, therefore, it's just going to be consumed into the region. America's going to retreat over the years ahead, and that industry is going to be allowed to live in peace. There will be a Palestinian state. That's what I think is currently happening right now. And that's where I can't remember why that came up. But I think, capital is going to enter into that region. And it's going to be a growth story in the region from here on in.
Thank you, Simon. I'm gonna go to the hands. I know that they've been super duper patient. Josie, go ahead. I think she's got a question for you. And then IDC Coop will come to you, and then we'll go to Cardano, Adele, and then Vicky.
Hey, what's up? So, I shared this space on Castle Club, and I told the members that if they had any questions, since you mastered in economics, so obviously there's you know, ask the experts, like they say. So, I mean, and the more you talk, the more they, the more question I get, the more answers you provide. So, like, okay, here's the one that keeps coming back is, okay, so there's two that there seems to a lot of people seems to be asking similar questions. Two of them. Number one is actually it's pretty simple, but why if because according to the expert right now, they're claiming that the US does not have the manufacturing power to put up with those tariffs. So like all the manufacturing that is going on in China, that we don't have the infrastructure, that we don't have the factories and everything. So why wouldn't China just drop those tariffs if we're not a threat? That's actually not a bad question, actually.
Uh, Tell me if I'm answering it incorrectly. I believe the strategy is not to win a trade war. I believe the strategy is to dismantle the post World War II Bretton Woods order. And we are going to a completely new world order, which is based upon regional powers. America has its role, which I've outlined before. And Trump's mission is to shake up the entire global markets, confuse everybody thinking that something else is happening, given that global capital is now repositioning and outflowing from America in the regions that aren't going to benefit from robotics and AI. And so you're going to rebuild your manufacturing base for robotics, AI, and energy and data centers because that is strategically important, as well as the military that comes from that as well. But everything else is being sacrificed. And so this strategy is to wipe out middle class, small businesses, just like COVID was, because they won't be able to afford the tariffs, and you have to buy from China. Rebuilding your manufacturing base, firstly, it won't happen for the industries outside of AI and robotics, which, by the way, is replacing humans with technology. And so you got to get through that as well. But that won't happen for a while. But all of the businesses that import from China don't have enough margin in order to pay the tariff that China's about to charge American business. That means that they either put their price up or they go bankrupt. That's the choice of small business. Large business will sit down with the Trump administration and they're already invested in China, they're already invested in the Middle East, and they'll come up with a reciprocal tariff deal saying, I'll build my factory here and allow you to build your drones there, as long as you don't tariff me here and you give me a tax credit here. And we'll move some of the business that we were offshoring into Ireland, and we'll bring a little bit of tax in here, but you got to give me more. And the big business will get a net better deal than where they were before. The small business will be decimated or push the price up. China will continue to export because there's nowhere else to buy them from. And China economically will struggle, no doubt about it. This is a re-collaboration, but it will draw all of the global relationships closer to China and closer to the global South ecosystem that China's been investing into. And so this will create capital outflows from America. It will mean that you can weaken the dollar, which will allow you to handle your trade deficit. And one thing that's a bit confusing to people is there is a condition, and there's something called Triffin dilemma if you put it in Grok or something, which states that in order to have the world reserve currency, you have to export currency globally, which is what America has been doing since Bretton Woods. And what is the dollar? Because the Federal Reserve co-opted the dollar is debt. And so therefore, the only way to have a world reserve currency is to have the largest debt. And you need to take that debt and export it all around the world, which is why America had the IMF, which was engage in economic terrorism globally to force people to take on the dollars, including the petrodollar, the euro dollar, get oil priced in dollars. That's why Israel was created, so that you could create the violence that is needed to have all oil in dollars. And it created a global terrorist network to prop up the dollar. And now the economic powers, i.e. the Middle East, which was the net victim of that, have managed to build up enough economic power, as well as China with their allies across BRICS, have now built up enough economic power to fight back against the dollar, not through de-dollarization, because they haven't done that, through economic brute and force and co-opting the Trump administration, the Biden administration. So when you think Trump is doing this, Harris is doing this, Biden's doing this, no, they are all doing what they're paid to do because America is not a democracy. America is a left and right distraction when the deep state and the Federal Reserve control America. The CIA and the Federal Reserve and BlackRock and Goldman Sachs and the European banks and the global banks and the global capital from the sovereign wealth in China, which owns 27 trillion of American assets, controls America. Trump is installed in order to do the agenda of what he is paid to do. His biggest backers is Elon Musk, a technocracy, the Mellon banking family, which want to split the world up into regions, and Adelson, which is an Israel first, try and give as much power to Israel.
Simon, if I can interject there,
Yeah.
I was with you all the way up until Trump's installed, and this is actually the big banks and Goldman and Larry Fink's idea. Like, no, that's where I get off. I'm sorry. Like the
I'm sorry,
Let's
status
debate
I
it
have
then.
another
quo.
important question. Can you just
What?
let him finish? Sorry about that. I got the guy sending me questions down there, and I really
Okay.
want to ask Simon because he's really good. So
Well, yeah, no, I want you to ask,
All
but I
right.
like the dialogue. You know, I
okay,
do want to hear the back and forth.
just
But
don't forget me. I got a second
I won't,
question.
love. I promise. I promise. I think the dialogue is helpful for people because there's a lot of people that you know, probably feel the same way that Matt feels. And I think that, you know, that this is where we comb through the knots, you know. But absolutely I won't forget you, I promise. Did you want to finish your question or your pushback and then allow Simon to respond, Matt?
Yeah, Matt, go ahead.
No. It's Josie's. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Let's do the back and forth, and then we'll go to another question. So
Oh, okay.
your
Yeah,
objection is
I
that Trump
disagree
has not
there.
controlled opposition.
Yeah, because look, for years, decades, the status quo has been incredible for the big banks, for Goldman, for BlackRock, for et cetera. Status quo has made them billions, if not trillions, and business has been good. That Trump's idea of remaking whole swaths of the U.S. economy, that's not in their favor. That's not in this. That's not what the old TradFi, old money elites wanted. They want a continuation of the status quo. They want the continuation of low to no tariffs, free trade, outsourcing manufacturing because I can find a worker in the Philippines that'll do the job for $1 when it costs in America $30 an hour. Like that's what they would want to happen to continue into perpetuity. So, I mean, whether we can debate whether Trump's rollout is smart or not, if it's too chaotic or not, but this is not in the old money status quo elites agenda.
Yeah, so I disagree. So old money had the post Bretton Woods 2 order, and they made the largest wealth redistribution that has caused, the point where you can't even one person can't look after a family. We got record suicide rates, record drug addiction, lowest birth rates, record suicide rates, record wealth inequality, record drug addiction. That's where we are right now. We're in the Valmore Republic, in that phase. Okay. Global Capital had a series of games, and it was to set what's the new world order going to look like. Are we going to World War III, or are we going to break the regions into regional areas? BRICS, Europe, America, Middle East, and America is no longer the global hegemon. America as the global hegemon did not win. And so now, how do you make a transition into regional blocks? You install whoever you need to be installed in order to create chaos and execute all of the capital flows that are needed, that wipes out small business, supports the technocracy and the global financiers, and allows them to take their capital out of America and over to the Middle East and China, and allows them to then reinvest that capital into America, AI and robotics and energy infrastructure, and the same in China. So the Goldman Sachs's, the Larry Finks, they're invested in all of that. And so this was a more profitable business than World War III. World War III was going to destroy all of their investments. That's what I believe Global Capital wanted. And if you need a team in order to execute that, you take the person that you were originally trying to wipe out, that was going through lawfare, that was going through assassination attempts, that was going through all of the things that he was going through, and you say, right, how about we put the person in that for 40 years have been talking about tariffs? And then we put the person in, Scott Bessent, who worked with George Soros in order to arbitrage the currency war between Europe and Britain, Scott Bessent. And then you put the Israel First implant in, which is, what's his name? The Cantor Fitzgerald guy. Why am I thinking of his name? I've forgotten.
Lottie.
Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you put the technocrat in, Elon Musk, that is going to be the receiver of, and he's a military guy. We know he's given technology in order to provide all of that data to get the back end that's needed for all the artificial intelligence, Palantir, genocide as a service stuff. And then you have the person that was Steve Witkoff, that is an investor in World Liberty Financial, the stablecoin that Trump created, that is an investor in the Harry Kushner network, which is where all the Middle Eastern Saudi money is coming from, and the person that has significant investments in the Middle East and China, which is Trump. And so he gets to have the Bitcoin play, the stablecoin play, the robotics play, the AI play, the Middle Eastern growth, and the China growth. And that's exactly where Trump's money is right now. And he is executing what he was paid to execute. This is no criticism of Trump. No politician is bigger than the deep state and the Federal Reserve. None of them. They only get that role if they can be utilized and they fund both sides. And so, Trump, if you want to take the emotion of Trump, Trump is executing to perfection that vision, which will lead to the wiping out of middle class businesses, just like he did with the COVID when he was a vaccine salesperson. And I'm sorry if you don't like it. I'll say the same thing about Biden. I'll say the same thing about Harris. I'll say the same thing about every politician, because this guy has executed what is the perfect narrative to make people think we're winning, wrap it in a MAGA wrapper, and get people cheering along, which is actually going to lead to massive capital outflows from America and a recollaboration of the economy to a stablecoin technocracy and social credit score.
Hey, Simon, can I ask you if you think, so if do you think it's just people in Trump's circle that just lied to him and maybe he doesn't even know what's going on, or do you think he actually knows what's going on?
I mean, the apparatus at which the deep state use is threefold. One is you just pay them. If you don't pay them, you blackmail them. If you can't blackmail them, you give them a near death experience. And if they get in power and they don't do as you say, you assassinate them. That's the entire history of American politics and British politics ever since the Bank of England created this model in order to enslave the Europeans and enslave the Americans into debt slavery. So you ask the question, you've got all these NGO networks, you've got these funding networks. The easiest way to co-opt Trump is to firstly say your lawfare goes away. We tried to push you into the whole Epstein thing. We got all those photos. That won't come out. And by the way, I'm not calling him a pedophile. I'm saying I believe that he was absolutely blackmailed by Epstein. You deliver Israel the goal that we want there, give them strategic power. You get to have investments in the Middle East. You get your fund with Harry Kushner, which is MBS and Saudi Arabia. You get to do your Bitcoin thing. You get your stable coin, which Steve Witkoff is a shareholder in as well. And you can just completely profit from the whole thing. But all we need you to do is wrap a MAGA narrative that makes Americans cheer it on. And what you need to do is either you believe that Trump is the savior and you don't change anything about your actions, and I think you will be destroyed, or you reposition around everything that Trump is profiting from so you can profit from it too and survive. That's my message. Trump is, I believe, 100% controlled opposition, as is Biden.
All right. Okay. So Josie, I know you had another question, and if anybody wants to come up, then by all means, please request.
Yeah.
I'll bring you up. And guys, repost the space. And I do want to talk about how there's the kind of moving towards the political environment right now and the timing for the advancement of technology and to create the political environment for that to happen. I think is at play as well. And we'll
I'll
get into
also
that.
add one more thing, Mace.
Yeah.
Don't think that me criticizing America. Please don't take it personally because I got a British accent. Brits and Europeans are even worse. They're not even going to have robotics and AI. They're going to have a central bank digital currency be decimated by the European Union and the European Central Bank. So my people, they're long gone. America, at least you have an industry. Our industry is just going to be big pharma, big banking, and the war machine. Like that's it. They have asset stripped the shit out of Europe. That Europe is it hasn't even got the opportunity to realign around an industry. You have to. So just please don't take this as America versus Europe or British versus American or Trump versus Biden. All of that is a distraction. It's centralization versus decentralization, and we the people are the ones that don't trust our politicians because they're all out to fuck us because they're bought by global capital, they're blackmailed, and if they don't play the game, they get assassinated.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so you did mention Credit Suisse earlier. and they took a massive hit in 2022, and a lot of private lenders here in the US got extremely affected by that negatively. A lot of lenders had to shut down. Is it a scenario that we're likely to see anytime soon regarding big banks lending money?
Yeah, so again, it's a conversation between the Federal Reserve and the technocrats. The technocrats are being given stable coins, which is treasury backed money. And the Federal Reserve has the old version of the dollar, which is just being able to create it through its network of banks, which are the shareholders in the Federal Reserve. Those two models are in strategic friction right now. You could either do a controlled demolition, swap one model for the other. You could do a hybrid model where Trump gets his stable coin, Elon gets his stable coin. You enter into a free banking era. Either way, I don't think anyone's going to lose their bank deposits. But if you have bank deposits at a bank that is to be replaced with a central bank digital currency or a stable coin, you will have to opt into the terms and conditions, and you may not have any choice on who your issuer is. So I don't think they'll wipe out your dollars, but they will give you a social credit score stable coin, most likely in America. And in Europe, you'll be given a central bank digital currency when they're ready to do that controlled demolition. So I don't think you lose your deposit, but I do think you lose your freedom.
All right,
All
thank you
right.
so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Josie, for taking those questions from Castle. What is it? What is it called?
Castle Club.
Castle Club.
What's the
Okay.
squad in the
And
house?
again,
Let's
sorry, not
go.
complete freedom. You need a ratio of assets, decentralized to centralized. Your dollars are centralized control and social credit score. That's why I told people saving in Bitcoin, or if you're not on the Bitcoin bandwagon, then look at gold. But you need outside. The reason that gold's hard is because you'll end up putting it in Singapore or Sweden, or sorry, not Sweden, or Texas or something, and you'll have it with a custodian. In 1933, they said, hand us your gold and we'll give you $20 of Federal Reserve notes. They may do the same. If you've got your Bitcoin exposure through MicroStrategy, I'm pretty sure at this point that Strategy is the CIA that is playing the fiat system in order to build a Bitcoin strategic reserve for America. So that stock will probably be swapped into a stable coin when America needs those. I'm not sure of the game theory exactly how it's going to work, but I do know that the Federal Reserve System is also invested in the technocracies. So whatever way it goes, they'll still be okay. You need to make sure you're okay, and you're okay by not listening to politicians and following their money instead.
Awesome. Okay, so let's go to it was ID Coop and then Cardano, Adele, and then Vicky. And then we'll go from there.
I thank my honourable friend. I thank Madam Speaker of the House for giving me the floor, and I would like to personally say a big thank you very much to Deputy Speaker Mr. Simon for answering my inquiries earlier. Regarding Europe, it's important to stress that when you talk about Europe has no future, I completely agree with you that will the EU even exist in say 10 to 20 years when you're looking at the idiotic policies they've implemented because they don't have cheap energy anymore. They burn bridges with Russia. Plus the fact they doubled down on austerity measures as well when they did neoliberalism on steroids. They literally don't have the production force to reindustrialize. And I really am happy you brought the point about the remilitarization. We're gonna use 800 billion euros to reindustrialize. It's gonna be based on debt. And that is not good for investment. And the fact that Chancellor Merz has become the Chancellor of Germany and he's openly said, I'm going to lift the debt brake. Germany's debt to GDP ratio is 65%. And because Germany is the largest European Union economy as well as Eurozone, This is going to leave many investors not wanting to hold on to euro bonds because of the amount of quantitative easing, as well as the fact that the number of the largest economies in the EU are currently suffering financial deficit. Whether it's France or Italy, you can look it up. And the fact that with the lack of investment in energy as well, the fact they listen to Greta Thunberg's wild fantasies of let's go green, don't use nuclear, let's get rid of coal and everything, they're now paying the price for stupidity. So really, the Europeans really do not have a future, and they're not really competitive. The fact they listen to Joe Biden, who openly said there will be no Nord Stream 2. You listen to a guy who forgets where he is half the time, and then you complain now that the consequences have come to bear. So they've burned bridges with China, they've burned bridges with Russia, two large, fast growing markets. And the fact that now they don't really produce much of their own products anymore, especially with Joe Biden's anti-inflation act, which was actually used to try and bring some industrial companies from Europe to the United States, because high electricity prices means that you will literally not be industrial anymore. So from glass making to paper making and all of the heavy industrial activities, that's why you're now starting to have high unemployment in Germany when it comes to Volkswagen, as well as automobile manufacturers, now literally doing vacancies in Germany for the first time ever, which was really not that, which was really ever rare. So concerning the competitiveness of the EU, you're right, they have no agency. And the fact that they ignored Russia's concerns when it came to Minsk 1 and Minsk 2 shows that they are not really good actors in good faith in sticking to agreements, as well as the fact that you've heard the truth come out that they were openly wanting to destabilize Russia so they could seize minerals, balkanize the country, and from there try to also antagonize China. If anyone's read the RAND report from 2019, the whole point of Ukraine was to basically weaken Russia militarily based on their terrible assumptions that, oh, Russia's economy mostly relies on hydrocarbons. So because of that belief, they thought that it was economic sanctions in 2022 that would destroy Russia's economy. But you have to wind the clock backwards to 2014 when Russia diversified its economy. Because if I'm not mistaken, hydrocarbons only makes up 5% of their actual overall GDP of growth. They diversified the economy since 2014. They got their own card system when it comes to Mir cards. So Visa, MasterCard that left the Russian market, that that ended up not crashing their banking system. And it's important to stress that with the threat of taking Russia off SWIFT, that also was negated when Russia established its own financial messaging system, SWIFT, which has been integrated with Iran and China's own. So it's important to stress that that's the reason why Europe is the biggest loser. Russia's re-emerged as a major power. And it's important to stress to my right honorable friend Simon that when we talk about a multipolar world, it must be stressed that when it was the United States as the only superpower, it was an aberration in international relations history regarding having just a single superpower. We're now going back to how the world traditionally is in terms of having multiple powers involved. So the aberration of the unipower moment is over, and you're correct in saying that the Americans inherited what the Brits had, which in terms was actually heavily influenced from the Pax Roma policy of expansion of empire and everything, as well as using their currency as a main medium of exchange. Hence, going back to what you rightly said as the Triffin dilemma. So that is correct in that regard. But then, like I say, in this fast emerging multipolar world, Europe is dead. It's decided to destroy itself, and so they have no choice but to rely on having some relation with the United States. But then when it comes to China, I would like to raise a key point that when you go back to 1979, when Deng Xiaoping initiated his economic reforms, he implemented state-led capitalism, and that was the model that was used as part of the East Asian economic miracle when it came to Japan and South Korea's rapid economic growth during the period from the 1950s to the 1990s. But it's important to stress that this model originally came from Europe and the United States when it came to Alexander Hamilton's historic report on manufacturers, as well as also Frederick List, who was the German political theorist who came up with the idea of rapid catch-up economics in order for countries to quickly catch up and industrialize as well as experience rapid development. So you saw the revival of this policy during the East Asian economic miracle, which in turn the Chinese successfully picked up on when it came to them opening up. And it's important to stress that whenever people say the narrative of, oh, China stole our technology, they're completely a bunch of liars. Forgive my language, Madam Speaker. But I have to stress this in that through the special economic zones, you would have foreign companies be in these special economic zones, which had different tax systems from within the other parts of China. As long as you set up your business in a technical park or special economic zone, which aka Shenzhen was the very first one, followed by Pudong and Shanghai, it's important that you also had joint ventures which were mandatory for 15 years. So a local Chinese firm would own 51% of the stake, and a foreign firm would own 49. And you'd have universities be setting up shop within these zones, so that way you'd have the human capital labor available to manufacture and produce the product that was being manufactured, as well as having subsidy policies as well as infant industry protection measure, which would be used only temporarily once a company is able to compete against foreign competition fairly. And just like the Nobel Prize winning Joseph Stiglitz stressed, in order to participate in globalization on your terms, you have to develop yourself first. If you decide to open up too early, you will risk having underdevelopment. And that's what happened with countries that pursued the structural adjustment programs of the 1980s, or AKA Milton Friedman shock therapy, which happened in the global south first, and which was eventually implemented in the global north when it came to Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, alongside Brian Mulroney in Canada and the Keating government in Australia. So that's the reason why you're now seeing the globalization and its discontents, in that while these Western countries decided to financialize their whole industries, China decided to stick to what real economics is when it came to focusing on industrial economics. So it's important to stress that Donald Trump is trying to steer the United States back towards industrial economics, whereas Europe, it's a bit too late. The ship has sailed. And it's important to stress once again that regarding the UK, myself and my right honourable friend Simon, where we currently reside, we can both
I
say on the
left.
ground, we could both honestly say that the UK, whoever says Britannia still rules the waves, is living in a dreamland, because our debt to GDP is 100%. And to make matters worse, due to austerity, we've underinvested in major infrastructure. Thatcher did not bother to look at new technologies and focus on innovation, which could have resulted in our long term economic growth, and decided to go for rapid privatization, as well as deregulation of certain sectors, lifting of capital controls, which has resulted in an outflow of human capital, sorry, not human, but capital flight. That's the reason why now the Brits, with these tariffs, if anything, we're going into recession, and it's killed us. Hence why Rachel Reeves has had to revise the growth figures during her spring statement, which is why Labour is busy doing this nonsense of we'll have great growth, but then you're willing to send £2.6 billion to Ukraine in a war that is clearly lost, and yet you're now having to cut welfare. And before I give the floor, I thank my right honourable friends for their patience. Another key thing that that I must stress about the Europeans, also I say strictly the EU, is this: in that the idea of the collective West has finally died. It is ended because Donald Trump has decided to withdraw from Europe, because he's now recognized this, in that the Europeans would always rely on the Americans for defense. They would rely on Russia for raw materials, so that way, that was how their prosperity was. So they can always predominantly, while they're deindustrializing themselves, would only be investing in welfare while still exercising austerity. But now that they've burnt bridges with Russia, they've lost the war in Ukraine, and the fact the Americans now recognize this and want to withdraw, that now means that the Europeans will now have in order to quote unquote reindustrialize, they have to be cutting welfare. That's on the chopping block already. In the UK, 500 billion support to people with disabilities has been announced to be cut by Keir Starmer's government. So forgive me for going over the place. I wanted to expand on what my right honourable friend has raised, while also clarifying some things, as well as also questioning the perception that China steals technology, Oh, China and its cheap labor. Actually, China has a lot of holidays because I lived there for a year. Like they got the Golden Week holiday that happens around autumn. They got the Moon Festival. They got Tomb Sweeping Day, and they got 11/11, which takes place in November. So they do have quite a few holidays out of interest, actually, as well as the Spring
Heidi,
Festival.
we got
Chinese.
a bunch of hands. I love you to death. I just wanted to kind of be conscious of that. They've been waiting forever, but
Oh,
but
I thank you for the timely interjection, Madam Speaker. I'm only a fellow participant and guest in your House of Commons. I give the floor back to my right honourable friend, but I would personally like to say Mon Moon as well to Madam Speaker, and a special thank you once again to Mr. Deputy Speaker, Mr. Simon, as well as Mr. Rant from across the pond as well. I thank you very much, my right honourable friend. I give the floor, and I'm grateful to have learned from this discussion. Thank you for your patience. Monmu, Madam Speaker, I give the floor.
thank you. Much love to you, ID Coop. I always love when you share. You know, I think that for the most part, one of the things that we haven't really discussed yet, that I would love to weave into the conversation. I'm coming over to you, Cardano, and then Adele, and then Vicky. But at some point, I would like to just and by the way, shout out to Ed. Thanks for coming, Augustus, my boy. He's up in the building as well, and I see Kurum here and some others that I brought up. So welcome, guys. But you know, the whole tax cut ordeal is seemingly the cushion for many people. They think, oh, this is going to just offset it. And we did talk about this early on. We haven't really zoomed into it yet, but you know, I think it's very important for people to understand these brackets and who it's going to be benefiting and who is going to absorb majority of the adverse impact. And I think that, you know, it's not necessarily a cushion for most. I think it's going to really make it difficult for people who are already having a hard time making ends meet. You know, who knows what their situation is going to be like, but people that were at least a little comfortable are going to be really stretching to make ends meet. I mean, there's just, you know, so I do want to weave that in to the conversation just so we can kind of throw it out there that, you know, even though it seems like, oh, okay, that's going to happen and so that's going to make it easier, we'll talk about the net benefit of that. So with that being said, thanks for being super patient, Cardano, and then Adele, and then we'll go to Vicky.
What's up, Maze? Thank you so much for inviting me up, having me up. It is always such a pleasure to hear from you and to encounter you in such pleasantly eclectic and diverse contexts. You know, from rooms such as these, and you know, all over the map. And shout out to Simon, Rance, Augustus, the rest of the room, ID Coop, Josie. Um, and yeah, such an
Damn, we got some glazer today.
Hey man, Josie, you
What's up?
already know. Together we rise, right? And we shine and we do the whole thing together.
And praise the Holy Spirit.
Let's get it. So it's such an important thing, right? These tariffs and the global impact, these discussions as they relate to kind of cryptocurrency. I do want to definitely, send flowers to Simon's way. I think the conversation that you have around this is very broad and diverse. And while I don't with anyone agree 100% on everything, I am refreshed by your perspective, and I am encouraged by the fact that we do still have platforms where we can have these exchanges and hear these words, because that is so important. So let's go, Simon. Thank you for having these conversations that, quite frankly, many are afraid to. So, shout out, let's go. But as far as these tariffs and maybe the impact of taxation and some of the silver lining, right? I look at many of these things like this incoming administration, for instance, right? I don't agree with everything about it, but what is. And to Simon's point, I also think it is wise to not expect this administration to work on your behalf, whatever you may think of them, right? But you can position yourself to take advantage of what we're seeing from, for instance, BlackRock, the largest institutional asset manager in the world, right? That is the canary in the coal mine. That is telling you where global old money flows, right? Where that's going. Bitcoin into 21 million units, right? These hard cap supply assets. They're escaping inflationary fiat and they're migrating to hard cap supply assets, hence gold and Bitcoin, as Simon points out. I think one way that I model this is if I'm going silver lining, because with the company that we have in this room, 7 degrees or 6 degrees of separation, The conversations we have here could land in oval rooms, if you hear what I'm saying, right? The way that we frame these conversations matter. And in the same way that these markets are being rattled by ambiguity, because what we have right now is we've learned that tariffs can suddenly encumber the world overnight. You know what else we know? They can unencumber us just as fast. Just what was it, 24 hours ago? Policy was passed at 3 a.m., right? Whether you agree with his administration or not, they have both houses of Congress, right? They've got the House and the Senate. So things can happen very quickly. And so not only can the tariff environment change, but cryptocurrency advantages. So I like this model, right? If I was going to get a model there and I was playing chess where everyone kind of wins, I would say this, approval ratings and all this. Tariffs are an auspice to renegotiate debt in a failing system, right? Interest rates, negotiations, and all that in US dollar denominated circles, right? And circumstances. Whereas we can create tax advantages with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency assets. Imagine suddenly the landscape if you're an individual making under $150,000 that pays no capital gains on Bitcoin and other digital assets. What if, for instance, you're a small coffee shop or a burrito shop? Someone was talking about a taco truck in one of these circles. What if, as a small business moving less than $10 million a year, what if suddenly you pay zero on all business that is conducted with Bitcoin and these kinds of things, right? So there is ambiguity in policy that can still fall favorably, that completely changes the game. And when we talk about international trade, imagine that discussion with China. Trade with us in US dollar denominations, 20% tariffs. Trade with us in Bitcoin, 0%, 3%, right? So there's so much on the table. There's so much ambiguity. And I think we're running into our fear and our uncertainty when we should also be embracing the ways in which we can actually advantage the people. Because that's another thing. I think Simon very cogently points out when we roll through these rooms in these days, when we talk about politics and we hear people dismissed because they have a certain hair color and they're this, or they wear a certain color hat, so they're that, that is divide and conquer, right? That is big money behind the scenes that runs on far longer time cadences than 4 years. It's the big money that runs the show against the people. Things like Bitcoin, these decentralized networks, as Simon says, that's how we fight back, right? We decentralize our money, we decentralize our communications, we decentralize our data storage, our the cloud, our computation,
So
our
like, is
AI
every
models.
crypto bro? Is every
Let
crypto
him
bro
finish.
just coming up to
Hey, man,
filibuster?
I'll
Like,
land this
Hold
plane,
on,
we
man,
get it.
Ivy.
Your
because
bags are. We get it. Your bags are down,
hey,
Ivy,
bro.
brother,
Like you're
brother, it's
Ivy,
bag
all love,
holding.
all love. I'm just
please
trying to,
don't do
It's
this.
not
help
all fun. It's
empower
very like
what
a
Okay,
real.
Ivy, he's waited forever to talk. Okay, please let him finish what he's
They're
saying
just
without
pumping their
interrupting him.
bags. They're not even saying anything.
I'm just saying, you just interjected, but let him finish. Go ahead, Cardano. I'm so sorry. It's probably
Yeah,
doubling
no,
your punishment.
all good, Mace. And truly, brother, I'm just trying to spread scientia potentias, knowledge is power. Do with this what you will, right? Like I, for instance, am not going to make money in XRP, right? Because yes, it has 100 billion supply, but they're making relationships with banks, right? They're the new banks. They are the CBDC. If you don't see that, right? So that's why I go with Bitcoin, Litecoin, Cardano,
So how
decentralized
would you not make
UTXO
money with
based
XRP
assets,
then?
etc.
Hold on,
But
let
I
him finish,
digress.
guys.
I digress, right? I want to keep the discussion, brief and on point. As Simon points out, how do we fight back? We embrace
Too late.
decentralization, assets that are beyond masters or kings, beyond centralized interests and institutions. And we see that these centralized interests and institutions are migrating their value to this asset. So if you get in early, whether you agree with those billions of dollars from Amazon or Berkshire Hathaway or an oil company to come, right? Because imagine, right? Proof of work runs on oil. So even if we electrify vehicles, guess what Chevron can do? Right, run Bitcoin miners. See the game theory there? But also, let me land the plane with this. We don't need to rely on the military industrial complex to have hope in these assets. A kid with a smartphone in India or Africa can make banger content and monetize that talent with Bitcoin, with Litecoin, with Cardano, with these international borderless and free assets that give us personal sovereignty and autonomy and allow us to be unfettered by petty tyrants and large interests and whatnot. So shout out to Free Conversations. Shout out to Maze Love, The Room, Simon Rants, DJ Satoshi, Josie, Ivy, and I cede the floor. Thank you for the time and the conversation.
I got to add my very quick comment, which is my opinion. Bitcoin is the only thing that's decentralized. Everything else is a centralized psyop.
I just now looked at the comments and people said that, right, I don't know if it's breaking news or what, but apparently Trump did a 90-day pause on all tariffs except for China. I'm wondering if any of those I'm going to look this up to verify while we go to Adele, who's been waiting patiently. And by the time
Fake news.
Quickly on
FUD.
that,
It's FUD. It's all
that's what he
FUD.
did last time.
FUD.
He
FUD.
did that
FUD.
last time.
All
I'll
right.
just be quick. He did that last time and then changed the narrative. Actually, no, somebody else said it last time. So make sure you find out who said it. But the only one that matters is China. Everything else is irrelevant. It's the China America trade war, the only thing that matters.
Yeah, I was gonna
I was
say it's
looking
like
at
it doesn't matter if it's just except China. Oh.
I was looking at it. He did post, it looks like he did post it. He's doing 125% tariffs on China and then 90-day pause on everyone else, but definitely verify. I was just going to say that
God damn it.
chaos creates opportunities. So I'm 100% on board with what Simon's saying. Whether all of the details are correct or not, I bought into this kind of thinking in 2021, whenever all of our 401ks were basically free of any type of fees to cash them out. And then I put it in Bitcoin. But I had been buying Bitcoin for years prior to that already. And I also believe in buying local, like going to the decentralization, buying local as much as possible. It's going to be what's, super important to local economies. I know Rance talks about this a lot. Maze, there's many others to talk about it. I'm 100% invested in this company that has gone out and they've decentralized the ranching in not just America, but across the globe. Like if you go to beefmaps.com, you can find a local rancher where you can go out to their ranch, meet the rancher, actually buy your beef from someone who's local in your area. I think it's a great project. But if you guys are interested, it's beefmaps.com. And then I've also kind of situated my life around AI. It's what all of my certifications are in and technology. So I highly recommend a lot of the things that he's recommended for decentralizing all of their power. And if more and more people do these types of things, then it's going to give them less and less power. So 100% on board with that. So I just wanted to voice that.
Yeah, Adele's going to be fine. Do what Adele says.
Awesome. All right. Vicky, thank you so much for being patient. Then we'll go to Prometheus and I want to tap in with Augustus and see what he thinks. And if anybody else wants to chime in, we'll take
Okay.
final thoughts. Hi, Vicky. Go ahead, hon.
Hi. Hi, all. Good evening. So I would appreciate this back and forth. So because I have one very short question, which I think nobody, neither here nor other financial spaces, has addressed, and is of acute personal, and general curiosity for me. And then I have a couple of general comments. So the question is about the VC industry and the Silicon Valley, whether the current chaos will affect this way or another investments flowing within US, like into American companies, or outside, overseas companies. This is the first question, and then I will just share my comments about general situation, and again, points that I haven't heard mentioned anywhere.
Yeah, Silicon
So,
Valley is going to be fine. Silicon Valley is a department of the military industrial complex. They're going to be fine.
okay, that's great to hear.
Uh-oh, did we lose her?
It wasn't so great to hear. She threw her phone at the wall.
Oh, no, I wasn't sure if it was me because I'm not hugging my router like I was before. Vicky, are you there? Uh-oh, she dropped. Maybe she had a phone call. Oh, she's back. Okay. Let's do a mic check for you, Vicky. There you go.
Connected, don't know why. So anyway, thank you for your optimism on the matter, because it's of personal relevance to me. Another comment, and I well, I'm in Israel actually, and I hear your picture of the,
Boo!
Hold on,
and
Boo!
stop, Ivy. Seriously, because I'm trying to close here in the next 15 minutes. I would love to hear her thoughts and anybody else's that wants to chime in. But go go ahead,
So,
Vicky.
okay, thank you. So global pessimism about, both Israel and Europe and other places, I think it's a bit premature. We had in Israel, in particular, we had our share of political shit even before the war. And actually that shit was steered by US, by a particular person. Actually, we have his name, who financed this right-wing, horrendously right-wing think tank that came with an idea of judicial reform here, which was which would probably get us into autocracy, religious autocracy. His name is Jeff Yass. He's very close to Trump, and he actually a shareholder in TikTok. I think the umbrella company of TikTok. So yeah, and people actually went into the streets. We protested, mass protest and everything. So and this ties to Europe. I
And
wouldn't actually discard popular revolt and popular displeasure so quickly, because there is one, ages old axiom: if the plebs don't have money for focuses, rich won't be driving their Lamborghinis,
hold on,
no
Vicky, just so
matter.
I understand what you're saying. So there was somebody here in the US that funded a think tank, and that think tank was what was responsible for trying to reform the Israeli government, to remove the judicial branch, to kind of give more direct power to the prime minister.
Yes,
And that
especially.
person, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah, and the thing is that Israel has a very particular demographic. Right now, I think about 60% of Israeli population are on some sort of religious scale. I mean, light religious, traditional, whatever. I mean, settlers are the crazy ones, of course, but the rest of the population is also on some sort of some sort of tie to religious concepts. So when you have a right wing coalition and you
Wait, with
give.
all due respect, ma'am, you sound like you're
Hold
from
on a
Eastern
second.
Europe.
Let
You sound
Ivy
like you're from
chill.
Eastern
No,
Europe.
no, no, no. She,
I don't know what you're doing in Israel.
Ivy,
You're not
stop.
native there.
You know
Like,
what? You're gonna make me remove you, and I don't want to remove you because you're my friend. Stop it. Go ahead, Vicky. Sorry. Don't even pay attention to him right now. He's
So when you give really unchecked power to that group of people, it doesn't come out very, very well. So we went out into the streets to protect the thing, and then the 7th of October happened. Now, regarding Europe, again, you are writing obituaries too early in my view, because there is no stronger power than the underdog. Okay, I think Europeans maybe slowly are coming to grips with their situation. Today, there was announced that, for example, Scholz has agreed a coalition only with SDU. So it will be a two-party coalition. They are going to do reforms, including reconsidering nuclear power. So I don't share your bleak version or bleak, scenario for Europe. Regarding UK, sadly, I'm not too encouraged. I lived in UK for some time, and I still have friends in UK, and it saddens me greatly, to see the state of affairs there. Now, regarding wiping out middle class, as I pointed out before I disconnected, you can build all economic scenarios you want, but unless the elites come out with a model, economic model, how to maintain their lifestyle from robots. As I said, if the plebs don't have money for focuses, rich won't be driving their Lamborghinis. It's a very basic, a very basic axiom. You cannot have the rich, the elites, the 1%, call them whatever you want, cannot have their riches with dissatisfied and impoverished masses, because the masses still have a certain power. Now, another major problem is that nobody matters and nobody mentions in this whole economic, whatever chaotic context with regard to China as well, is an inverted demographic pyramid. You have a huge swath of aging populations which live forever but in a decaying state, and you have negative birth rates except for Africa. And actually, Africa is also moving into lower birth rates. Now you have to tackle it, because if, Simon, I follow your logic, you you wipe out middle class, you have bloody, centenarian zombies with Alzheimer's who live forever. I mean, where will the money come from for the elites? And actually, the saddest solutions that I've been seeing, it's like Canadian made. And I think in Netherlands and Belgium they also have it. Now, listen, personally, I am for assisted dying, because right now I kick asses, but I wouldn't like my son, to pawn his future wiping my ass, or slaving out just to have a carrot to wipe my ass. Personally, I am for assisted dying, because at a certain point, when a person loses their mind, they lose everything, and their physical existence is meaningless. But and in China, China is going to half in about, I think, 20 or 30 years. Actually, right now, I think they're already in a negative population growth. It will be a second year, I think. So
Vicky, if you
anyway,
could, yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah.
I'm wrapping up. So,
Yeah,
so
can you land, please?
yeah,
That's
I'm
okay.
wrapping.
Go ahead.
So what I'm saying is that with, there are many other variables that smart analysts, and experts seem not to take into account, which can actually impact and change the whole outcome. This is what I wanted to say. Thank you for the mic.
Okay, I'll
You took
answer it.
all this time to say
Hold
that?
on. No,
Oh.
it's fine. Let's not be rude, guys. All right. That's not how
Yeah.
Maze runs her space. I appreciate everyone. Everyone's like a guest on my stage, whether we agree with them or not. It's just about respect and hospitality. That's all. Josie's my
Uh,
little, she's my firecracker. But anyway, go ahead, Simon. Jump in.
yeah, I'll try and give fireside answers because I speak too long. Let me try and do short. I open the door to any Israeli that would like to be anti-genocide. You're a very important part of the ecosystem, and I'm sorry your government managed to brainwash so many people and radicalized both Christians, Muslims, and Jewish people. It was the mafia. It was a partnership between the Italian mafia, the Rothschild family, the British crown, and the Jewish mob, and they don't give a shit about Jewish people, Christian people, Muslim people. In fact, they see you as indispensable, and they will kill you, rape you, massacre you whenever it's useful for them. And so, any Israeli that wants to see outside that psyop, I think you're a very useful part of the movement, and I always want to welcome that open door for that. With regards to solving demographic issue. That's why we're entering into a robotics and AI world. Humans are no longer useful in the world of the next 10 to 20 years, other than the ones that have figured out over the next 10 years how to become economically powerful. Economic power is going to determine which side you sit on, and the rest are going to be universal basic income. And so that's how you solve that issue. You move to a surveillance state, a technocracy, and the problem is with protest is that protest, as George Soros has taught us, is always co-opted and used to actually achieve the opposite of what the original intention was. And so by manufacturing consent to opt out of rights, um, moving over to a technocracy, then you're able to fully control the masses, and any And what is happening in Israel right now on the Palestinian people is a beta test of what will be integrated into the European Central Bank digital currency and the American stablecoins, where if you try and protest, they'll treat you as a Palestinian and they'll kill you.
Oh, sorry, why not kill all the Alzheimer's? Why wait 10 or 20 years? Because
Well, you got to do what Israel did. You got to slowly try and get away with it. You can't just outright genocide. You got to make it look like you're controlling the narrative before you execute it. You got to make it look realistic. You got to control the media. You got to slowly do it, and otherwise you might screw up the whole strategy. Especially if a bunch of people have Bitcoin and they have independence and they're decentralized, which is where we all need to fight back together.
All right. I'm gonna I'm gonna reserve my comment because I don't know about the whole assisted killing thing. That's a little bit, yeah, that's an interesting. I will say that in the United States, with the whole Social Security being already, they're borrowing against it, so there would be some sort of incentive, if you will, to I don't know, to pull off something for the baby boomers that are about to retire by 2030, which I am a little nervous about. But I'm gonna just alchemize that and say that hopefully we'll get it together by then, guys. With that being said, let's go to Curry, and then we'll go to Thorough. I think that's how I pronounce it. Apologies. Okay, awesome. Go ahead, and then we'll go to
No,
Prometheus.
thank you, Mace. Was great space, and thank you, Simon, for giving insight and everything. I think, from the perspective that we are actually reading all the financial markets and the money flow and crypto and all that, I think there's inherently something built in which we haven't really discussed. In all the midst of it, like I was going to actually talk about that. This scenario soon is going to be unfolding, that where this is going to be paused or this is going to be delayed and everything. And while we were discussing that, the news came in. What kind of impression you are actually giving out to the world? That's the biggest question mark. The credibility the U.S. had at some point in time, that it doesn't go alone, it gets the allies with him, and then ultimately actually crack the problem open, and then creates another problem in order to actually solve one problem. Now, in this scenario, what is actually happening? What kind of messaging is happening? Now, you go into the Columbia, you send, the plane load of people. The head of the state actually says, okay, turn around and go back. And then you slap them like with a 50% tariff. And the guy says, oh, here we go. I'm going to send my planes to actually bring those people back in, and you can send more. You go to Panama, you go to Venezuela, and you start to actually get the objectives meet within no time, and people started loving it. But you go to Canada, and then all of a sudden, like, you go on the pause for 30 days, and then the moment it gets effect into it, Canada rise up and say, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And all of a sudden, what happens is there's a criticalness in this whole scenario inherently, that Canada can actually switch off your electricity, and all of a sudden, like 3 or 4 states can actually have the rolling blackouts. Now, there are going to be the countries who can actually stand up. Now, there is a pattern. So you can actually divide those number of countries into two groups. One is going to actually stand up, and the other one is going to actually say appeasement policy is going to go. So UAE is going to say, okay, we're going to actually invest in US 1.4 or 1.2 trillion dollars. Saudi is going to say, we're going to raise up our $600 billion commitment to $1 trillion now. But there are going to be the countries who's going to actually stand up. Now, you cannot play this game of like within an hour, you can actually keep on pausing. What kind of messaging is going to be done? I mean, these tariffs are not switch on and off buttons that you can just simply say, okay, I'm going to actually have this many 29%, 26%, 54%, 45%. This is not a game. Um, the actual ships are en route to the US. What happens? Like, I mean, there are logistics involved in these tariffs. When they actually hit the shores of US and start unloading, how are you going to charge them? How are you going to implement them? what kind of messaging is being going on. So basically, the whole world is at their toes and realizing that what exactly is happening, what White House actually wants. Even the White House staff doesn't know exactly what's going to be the next policy is going to be. So here you have a superpower who is actually doing all this mixed messaging, and the rest of the world is saying, okay, fine, half of the world is going to actually say that we're going to actually fight back. The rest of the half is going to be following a policy of appeasement, and there is no clear outcome. It's not the matter of like how the money is going to flow, how the small business is going to be crippled, how the actual product is going to come in from China or not. It's about the messaging. This is about the responsibleness that one superpower has to actually show to the world that they have what it takes to become a superpower or contain it. And this is what the underlining message is, that we have to really look at it, that four pillars of the state is what they are doing. Last time what has happened, the actual Supreme Court actually stepped in and tried to actually balance it. Right now what is happening, that the White House on steroids, making decisions which doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and we are becoming a circus in this whole saga. So that's where I want some comment from Simon. That do you think that US is very fast losing its place to become a responsible superpower? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll answer quick. So the difference between how you think and how I think is you think that countries making their own decision. I believe that global financial institutions control the world, and they pay politicians to do what they want to do. And so, therefore, countries are doing what global finance wants them to do. And I believe that global finance wants to break the world into regions, and shrink America into a regional power for robotics and AI, and usher in a stablecoin technocracy. And therefore, I don't believe that Trump and all these countries and all these reactions, their job is to just, create the chaos that's needed in order to usher in the eventual world order that global finance, which consists of a few people, are able to direct the world into. And that's the key difference. And then in terms of what that means, go back to the beginning of this recording if you weren't there, and I outlined where I think it all goes in longer form.
You think there's a method to this madness? My
Yeah,
argument
shake
is
up.
that
The chaos is the strategy.
it is the chaos. It's literally nobody knows what's happening. I mean, if you look at it like it's past 2 months, the erratic behavior of making this critical decisions, which has to actually streamline. I mean, there is an operations element attached to whatever decision you make. How this is going to be implemented, that's what it is. I see just a chaos. I do not see any method to it. That's what my argument is. Over to you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
chaos is the
Oh,
strategy.
it is. It is. All right, let's go to Thorough, then we'll go to Josie, and then I'll get final thoughts, and then we're going to shut this down after that. Go ahead, Thorough. Thanks for being.
Hey, Maze,
Oh,
when do I go?
I was
oh,
going
I
to say
didn't see your
Maze,
hand up. Sorry, Prometheus.
yeah,
I got you.
Prometheus. There we go.
So, go ahead, Thorough. Sorry.
Oh, I was just saying Maze and Simon. I believe Prometheus was up first, but I just came on to say thanks for doing this show. I really enjoy when Simon just gets to run on like this. It really, because a lot of people will interrupt him and stop him. And anyway, I just appreciate you letting him cause it's just a lot of fun to listen to him. Whether we agree on 100% of the points or anything, it just doesn't even matter to me. I just like the way he lays it out. So anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Have a good day.
Yeah, that's the point as well. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm just giving you my theory, put myself on the line, and I'll adjust it when I'm wrong. And I welcome pushback.
Well, what I appreciate about you, Simon, is that you began learning everything about economics a long time ago, and I think all of the world events recently kind of red pilled you, for lack of a better word, as to what's going on. But your ability to actually have, first of all, the capacity to really see the world in the way that it is very difficult for many. Not only do you do that, but you have this calm about you. You have the strategies about you. You have the, what people can do to kind of, to maybe make it through the turbulence that we're about to feel. And I think it's very refreshing. That's why I love when he talks uninterrupted. And a lot of people obviously are very tuned in and listening to him because he's very knowledgeable. And he's very objective too. I don't think that he's got any motives to steer anybody in any narrative. He's fluid.
Except Bitcoin. I've got a
I've
Bitcoin
Yeah, I
agenda,
know you
definitely.
definitely you do.
Well, and on that point, let me make my closing remark here, because this is what I would
All right.
say on your point, Simon, about the psyops. I would say this: if these interests, as we know, big money is that good at creating these psyops, Satoshi wouldn't want Bitcoin to be the only solution. Game theory and all that, we don't want to have Titanic be the only ship. And I would say the Edinburgh Decentralization Index, totally different conversation. But if we want to have a real conversation about the validation networks, the distribution, decentralization of not only the hardware, but the minds that are saying, yes, I will run the software, all that, awesome discussions. But I echo everything that May said. I celebrate your discussions, your perspectives. The bravery to have the discussions is great, because it gives us that ground where whatever the outcome is, we can
Name one use
objectively
case for
assess it, because you
Cardano.
bring a lot of this
Name
on us.
one use
No,
case for
stop,
Bro,
Cardano.
Ivy. Stop,
you
Ivy.
have an
But guys,
insecurity,
Name one
unfortunately,
use
right?
case for
Yeah,
guys,
let's
Cardano.
most
let's not
Thank
debate
you.
Cardano. Let's not. It's not a good
Name
place.
one use case.
Yeah, amen, Simon, Simon. I appreciate you, bro. I appreciate you too, Maze. Hey, Ivy, if you gotta, we're good, bro. It seems I get you emotional. I
he's just a
apologize if I've
troublemaker.
upset you.
Ivy's just
I know
he
he
has a
is.
fun
It's all
little,
good.
he likes to troll people on stage sometimes. That's all. All right.
I'm not
But look,
trolling.
I
I'm being
think
dead
it's
serious.
important. A
But I,
couple of
but I,
things.
I agree. I agree with Ivy. I'm not a Cardano man, just for the record.
Yeah, I
He had to
wasn't
put
even
that out
trolling
there.
you. Thank you, Simon.
Okay, so what I do want to say is that maybe we should have a space where we kind of focus in on the importance of decentralization. Like literally that's the entire topic, and what that looks like on different scales. I mean, I think the data scale is one thing. So they're creating these sandboxes, guys. So like for instance, Honduras, there's an island in Honduras where they've already started this. It was kind of the pilot of sorts of where they're advancing all kinds of tech, and alternative tech, like what like the digital IDs that would be essentially used, and they use it as like a simulation of sorts before they roll it out. They want to create one of these in Greenland as well. And I'm working on this article that I have yet to release, because it keeps it's so much going on, and I want to make sure that like I'm getting all the like a very well-rounded perspective around it. But I do think that we're kind of advancing into the next paradigm very quickly, and a lot of the things that we're focused on, and I mean, these things are very important, obviously tariffs, and how that's going to impact our economy and our quality of life, cost of living, everything is very important. But I also think that the other political, like everybody's like waiting for the Epstein files while they're kind of really moving very fast towards advancing tech and ID and data that is intended to create what's called a sentient world simulation. I'm going to have a whole space on this. It's coming soon. And what does that mean? It's really, really important for us to break down what centralization should look like and be pushing for that and making sure there's a feedback loop. That I think deserves its own space. So with that being said, let's go to Prometheus and then Josie and then back over to Simon for final thoughts. And then we're going to close this one down. But continue to share it, guys, because all the information that was shared is very important and it's recorded. Go ahead, Prometheus.
Thank you, Maze. And what a space we have had. Simon, big thank you for your deep and thoughtful insights. I've personally learned a lot, took a lot of notes. I'm going to be following up on the money transfer flow directions that he's been pointing out. Definitely a lot of what Simon says holds water. We are going to see a section of the world for sure that is going to be under technocracy. And Maze, you know me, I love throwing in the spiritual dimension in all of this. And I truly believe we're living through prophecy, folks. We're living in the early stages of what will eventually become the mark of the beast system. And that is essentially a blockchain-based system that will determine, essentially through the equivalent of CBDCs, implanted under the skin, by the way, through a chip of some kind, whether you'll be able to buy or sell. Now, if you want to escape that system, there are ways to still do it. It hasn't been implemented yet. Okay. And this is where, Simon, I think I'm going to respectfully, sir, disagree with you on a couple premises, because I believe central banks are not the one who's in control. I believe Lord God Almighty Jesus Christ is in control, first and foremost. And I do believe that we, the people, have a lot more power than we give ourselves credit for. If we work together, ladies and gentlemen, we can create a decentralized nation state, and we can actually, like Cardano, God bless Cardano. Listen, whether you love it or hate it, it's pioneered decentralized governance in a way. Mays, you have to look at their constitution. Okay, it is phenomenal. I truly believe it is a step in, in
I mean, I
democracy, the
feel
likes
you,
of
but
which.
we're not going down that route. I appreciate it, but I just kind of, maybe any of your thoughts on what Simon was saying about the tariffs or any of that stuff, that would be great. You can weave in the spirituality.
I'm
He
getting to
always
it.
sprinkles it. Go ahead.
I was getting to it. So look, Trump is a mixed
No,
figure.
no, she said we weren't doing that today.
No,
She
it's
didn't
okay. He's
say
about
keep
to get into it,
going.
Josie. Go ahead, Preet.
Yeah,
Oh my God. But like, come on, like they can't
Trump
even make a
is a mixed
microchip that
figure.
tracks my dog on Life
I
360. Like,
believe
are
Hold on.
we really
that
gonna
Trump
talk about
is
that?
the Isaiah 45 Cyrus of the end times. But look, that doesn't mean that he's right about everything. And certainly with tariffs, look, if you want to bring industry back into the United States, including manufacturing, this is how you do it. It's you have to make it more incentivized for global capital to come invest in the United States. And look, the numbers to an extent show this. He's raised literally trillions in weeks. I don't know of any other president in history who's done that. Now, does that mean that everything he's doing is going to
Raised
benefit the
it from
ordinary people?
where,
No.
Prometheus?
That's a good question. Okay, he raised it from Saudi Arabia. He raised it from SoftBank in Japan. They're putting down several hundred billion themselves, and so this is going to manifest to some degree in industry in the United States. But as Simon pointed out, a lot of this is going to go up to the top 1 percentile. Like zero or the 0.01 percentile, right? Your Elons, your Klaus Schwab types. Okay, well, Elon is not a Klaus Schwab, but just the top percentile. And so, what is it that we, the people, can do? And I'm going to land with this point. All right, what you can do, and everyone who's in this audience can do, okay, is keep coming to spaces like these. Maze hosts a lot of really informational and positive spaces where we actually discuss real solutions. Okay, we can leverage this technology, and especially Bitcoin. I am not anti-Bitcoin. Okay, I'm just a mixed martial artist guy. I think there's value in all kinds of systems, and you have to sift through the bullshit to find the real gems. I consider ADA to be one of the gems, and I am a Cardano man. But to each their own. And so every one of you who's in this space, please study about these new technologies. Find different ways to become independent. You can create vertical farms in your local area. You can pool resources together with your neighbors and start investing to become independent. This is the most important thing we can do together. And of course, create community, create networks. Okay, when we work together, we can solve hard problems. And with that, Maze, I'm going to land. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Prometheus. All right, we're going to go to Josie, and then we get to hear from Truth Teller. And then I have a few thoughts that just came to me based on a couple of things, and then we're going to get Simon's final thoughts, and then we're going to be out of here. Okay, go ahead, Josie.
Holy cow, I swear some people take longer to land than Spirit Airline at LAX. Okay. So I got a question from somebody. Hold on. Said ask Simon what percent chance does he think he could be wrong and Trump could be correct?
I think I don't know what they mean by Trump is correct, but I think Trump is here to fulfill a deep state mission, and I tell you what I'll say. I'll know how I'm wrong. I'll know if I'm wrong if he ends the Fed, releases stable coins that pay the yield onto the consumer rather than to himself, Elon, and everybody else, implements a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and releases the Epstein files, the 9/11 files, and JFK files that actually reveal Mossad for their true role. If he does all of that, then I believe he's MAGA. If he doesn't do that, then I believe that he's fulfilling a mission of who paid for him, blackmailed him, and potentially assassinates him if he doesn't do it.
I have a question for you, but I'll wait. Go ahead. Truth teller, how are you? Love, welcome. Thanks for coming.
I
M- m-
drew.
Mace, quickly on this particular point before we
Yeah.
actually move on. Simon, what if he is kind of like realizing this, that the deep state is going to be
Rude.
ultimately after him
Well,
if he had on, implement all those things, what you are actually
well, you
saying?
can't really get past
And
like if there is, let's just say if there is any type of blackmail or whatever, you know, I don't know that whether he realizes it, it's already held against him. I think Simon's not saying that like he was all kind of in partnership and then said, "Oh, maybe these are bad guys." I think, I don't know what's going on, but I'll just tell you
but
that.
but
Yeah,
Maze,
I
what
don't
if he is
question
buying the
motivation.
time?
I just question what I see. So I try not to add a why is he, what is his motivation? Is he a good person or bad person? Like if somebody is going to assassinate my family, steal all my money, ransom me, put me next to photos with Jeffrey Epstein and some children, then I'm no longer independent. I'm just a victim of the state. Now, whether he's making shitloads of money, I think that's all irrelevant. To me, I just follow the money, figure out what I think's coming next, and help people position so that they can protect themselves. Because I think it's a massive distraction to believe that Trump's their savior. In fact, I think it's very disempowering. Because if you believe he's going to save you, then I think actually that's a distraction between you and the creator, and I think that's the only relationship that people should have. And everyone else in the middle is a flawed human being, just like me. I get shit wrong, I get shit right, but I'm just trying to say, I don't really care why Trump is compromised. I just believe he is, and what should you do in order to protect yourself and your community around you?
Simon, really quickly, and then we'll go to Truth. Do you think that this tariff war, this back and forth with China, was like it went wrong? Like he didn't expect the response, and then ego and narcissism got in the way. Like, why are we at 100 and what now percent? I just feel like that's a possibility, and perhaps, with like, or I don't know. Like, it just seems
No,
to
I
me that
think
it
I
got
think this went.
reckless.
I think, yeah, I think this went right, and I think the idea was to shake up the entire world markets and reposition the world in the position that global finance has is going to profit from.
Okay. Yikes. All right. Truth teller.
Could I chime in on that?
How are you, love? Go ahead and jump in, and then we're gonna go to final thoughts and close down.
A-
What's
And
your take
Truth's
on
going to
everything?
tell and Truth's going to tell us who global finance is.
Why
I
did you
mean,
wait for
Simon,
me,
you're the
Simon?
self-proclaimed expert. I can't teach you anything. You already know. We talk about it all the time. I was going to talk about the tariffs,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Talk about the tariffs.
there's someone who also mentioned that Trump's raising money by cutting back on U.S. aid, et cetera, even though the courts have already rejected a lot of those cuts. But then let's not forget that Trump's also spending a lot more money as well. He's trying to create the first ever $1 trillion defense budget. So much for savings that supposedly others are going to benefit from because there's going to be redistribution of this, this newfound wealth from all these raised billions of dollars. Guess what? It's just getting spent elsewhere. So the American taxpayer doesn't benefit worth anything. Going back to the tariffs, well, again, I've said this from the very beginning. Can't really engage in a successful tariff war when you don't have a manufacturing base already that's thriving or in some way competitive. It's not, especially when you've shipped off a lot of jobs for a lot of the goods you make and you're importing a lot of the goods from China already. It's like $600 billion worth of trade already with China. And yes, there's a big deficit. I don't think tariffs are really going to fix that or help the manufacturing that Trump has in mind. It's wishful cope. It's going to cause a lot of inflation and instability in the markets and probably lead to a recession. And Trump's hope has also increased the yield curves. I'm sure Simon's noticed that as well. Do you know what that does? That increases the debt interest payment that goes to the Federal Reserve. So they're loving these policies because guess what? Now they're not going to drop rates because they're loving these higher interest payments.
So that's going to fail as well, which means Trump somehow can't lower taxes now because he still has to make those interest payments, or there's going to be a default. So there's no win here really for America. It's going to be a given. Yeah, there will be an eventual meeting with China, just as there's supposed to be a meeting with, I guess, Iran. He's meeting with Iran this, what was it, Saturday in Oman to discuss another nuclear deal. If I'm Iran, I'm like, you fooled me once with the other nuclear deal. Am I really going to get fooled twice with a second one to give up the missile program as well? Because he's just adding all. He's going to, I believe, structure it in such a way that he's going to make an offer that they simply have to refuse because it's just not going to be in their national interest to even consider it. So I think in one way, shape, or form, it's going to entail normalizing relations with Israel. I don't think Iran has any appetite to do that because you just can't trust the devil, really. But okay, going back to the tariffs
Well, did
overall.
you know that
To
Netanyahu came up here, like I think it was yesterday or the day before?
yes, yes. He did,
Okay.
and
Oh yeah.
he adjusted his chair again. How nice! And of course, Trump
Oh
had to
yeah, that's
do the
right. Okay,
equivalent
okay, yeah.
of the Wailing Wall and pay, kiss the ring again. And I don't know why. It seems like it's more so than with Biden. They have to show Netanyahu sitting and signing things. It's like he's signing the executive orders on behalf of Trump. He's like, get out of the way, kid. The real president's in charge now. You can stand and watch. I'll let you know if I need anything. Go stand in the corner over there. That's what it looked like. That's the sense I got from that image. That you could clearly see the power dynamic, and Trump's big ego was definitely contained. Just can't say or do whatever he wants around Netanyahu, because if he does, he's going to get spanked. I think the only thing that he said that kind of annoyed Netanyahu was when he said that he's going to be negotiating with Iran. And yeah, that might peeve Netanyahu. At the end of the day, he knows that it's for PR. They have to, say they're going to engage in the negotiation to see how much they can get out of Iran, but it's also a spying session to find out more of what they're up to. Of course, they're going to record the whole conversation, and they're going to try to dig and see what they can find out before they'll probably reject any offer that's made, because it's an all or nothing deal that they're trying to offer. Why would Iran want to rely on centrifuges and nuclear fuel from Russia when they already know how to do the whole process themselves, and it's their right to develop energy for peaceful purposes? Because why should they just have to rely on oil and natural gas when there's fluctuations in that price? Every nation should seek energy independence. Iran is no exception here. So again, going back to the tariffs, waste of time to engage in a tariff war. China will win. China also provides the majority of the world's essential or precious metals that are used for lots of electronic items, including, guess what? Arms. U.S. arms industry is going to get fucked again as well, because they rely again on guess who for those precious minerals? On China. That's where they get 80% of their precious minerals. So unless they're willing to remove all of their bullshit environmental protections that should have never been there
That's
in the
where
first place, because
Greenland
the
comes
EPA has
in, Truth.
way too much power and control, and America shouldn't even exist among the 430 government agencies. Because if Trump is really serious about cutting back on government, slash a lot of those agencies that have a whole lot of redundancies, like between an NSA, between a Department of Homeland Security and a CIA, FBI, all these different divisions for security, and there's many more, by the way, just named 4. Why do you need so many? Cut back on those. You can save billions and billions of dollars consistently, but he's not doing that. And this whole claim that he's now making $2 billion a day on tariffs, they just went into play. You haven't made a dime yet, because there's going to be impact on trade. But he likes to make these huge proclamations without actually pointing out. And I did the math for everybody about how much more it means when the deficit at $37 trillion goes up by 0.1%. It's an extra 36 or $37 billion that needs to get paid now towards the debt. There's no savings there. I'm sorry. And that current debt payment, I did the math here. Let me pull it up so I get the exact number. It's close to $2 trillion a year now. Do you guys know what that adds up to per day, which Trump doesn't like to talk about? It's close to 4 billion. Well, it's more than that, actually. I'll give you the exact amount in a second. Why isn't it coming up? I gotta go to profile. 1 second. I'll pull up the exact amount per day that has to get paid, because he doesn't want to talk about this amount. It's a ridiculous amount of money. And the amount is $4.5 billion per day that gets paid towards the current debt owing to the Federal Reserve. And this amount's only going to go up higher as the yield curve goes up higher with these tariffs. And of course, as the debt goes up higher, because the US is going to have to increase its debt ceiling once again, just to avoid defaulting and losing its grip as its control as the world reserve currency that it currently has, that it may not have forever. But then Simon and I have both discussed this before. The objective isn't to keep the dollar as a world reserve asset, it's to bankrupt America. I'll finish on this point that Netanyahu made back in 1990, that he views America as a golden calf that he's going to chop up into bits, sell it off, and turn it into a welfare state. You can see that already with over 30 million people that are homeless and in poverty, and many more living paycheck to paycheck, deciding between eating and heating, filling up their fridge, or filling up their gas tanks. Americans are having to make tough decisions because their financials have continued to decline, and it's happening incrementally, so they don't really notice what the cause is. It's due to undue inflation, of course, unemployment that shouldn't exist. That's because of the Federal Reserve, and of course, the austerity measure of taxation, which Trump's doing nothing about. There should be no income tax. It's actually against the Constitution, and the Income Tax Act, Amendment 16, has never been properly ratified. But I'm not here to tell people not to pay their taxes. That's against the law. Don't be like Hunter Biden unless your dad's ex-president, ex-VP, and he can give you a pardon. So, on that note, thanks for the space. The tariffs are, again, an exercise in futility, a fool's errand, won't help America at all. And if there's better things Trump should be doing. My top three would be, of course, repealing the Fed, getting rid of Amendment 16, ending all the Jewish lobbies, and enabling better circumstances for American corporations to return by we're giving them very good tax breaks, subsidies, so this way they could try to compete with China just as China does, and nationalize some of the companies rather than just give away free money. Thank you.
Thanks, Truth Teller. You know, one of the things that also, just for people to know, like there's this idea that they're going to completely do away with income tax and that's going to be replaced by tariffs. That's again misinformation. And so I might do a space just to kind
But
of
that is
break
what it
down.
was. Before Amendment 16, they used to collect
Yeah,
excise taxes, and it was a much smaller government. You
yeah.
don't need a massive inflated government like you have if you're really serious about wanting to save on government consumption.
Right. But you know what he's doing instead? He's only saving for the top 1%. That's who's benefiting from this. The taxes that
Well,
he's
that's who gives them, those are his
the
donors.
tax the
And who are
tax
those donors,
reform.
Simon? The Adelsons, the Kushners, the Altmans, the 0.1%.
I mean,
Yeah,
it's crazy, but yeah.
I do think you'll get
It's
the.
those North Koreans, Mace. It's those Chinamen. It's China.
I do think they will throw some relief at the bottom. I think they will give you that tax relief to those below 150,000. But I think it's just to help you survive, like because we don't want to send the whole world into like civil unrest. But
Well,
I do
actually,
think
I
he'll
looked
follow
into
through with
that
What's it
it.
going to
though.
be,
That's
Simon? A $750 one-time
well,
check?
yeah, no,
Well,
it's
that will
listen.
be with his stable coin for adoption reasons.
The amount saved for the okay, I have it broken out in three brackets. That's the thing. It's really the top 1% that actually save money, get more disposable income. The rest, matter of fact, what they found was in by 2027, it had a reverse effect. Where's my other phone? Hold on. I have it in my notes. Where it's not, hold on. I'm coming. Okay, boom, here it goes. All right, so the adjustment, okay. So the permanent extension, he wants to make the TCGA from 2017 permanent, introduced reductions in individual income taxes, which are set to expire at the end of 2025. He wants to make them permanent and an ongoing relief to taxpayers too. The elimination of taxes on tips and overtime. So that is, I think, the element that is going to be different. So proposed plans to include exempting the tip income and overtime earnings in the federal taxation, and then the exemption of Social Security benefits from taxation. The administration has suggested removing these from the retirement, Social Security retirement, and to enhance financial support for retirees. Now, the corporate taxation, so further reduction of corporate tax rates. So reduction of corporate from 35 to 21. There have been discussions about even lowering it further to 15% for the domestic production activities to stimulate economic growth. So the the consideration of tax increases for high earners. Apparently, there was recent discussions that indicated openness to raising tax rates on the highest earning Americans, suggesting a potential shift. So we'll see more to come on that. Revenue generation through tariffs. Okay, we already talked about that. All right. Now,
Ask Simon a quick question.
yeah. And then,
All
yeah,
right, very
I
quick.
found that.
Simon, so there's this meeting that Trump's going to do in Oman with Iran. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think we're on. I think this is where Truth and I differ. Actually, I think that I think okay. This is another one of my criteria of whether or to judge Trump by. I believe that the GCC has change the power dynamics in the region. And I think Israel is no longer a useful tool and has been decapitated. And Trump's just delivering as much strength to Israel in a what I think is actually going to be a pretty big negotiation of a change in the region. And I think the only way to achieve it, which a million things could go wrong, is that I think Iran would agree to a nuclear deal if Israel has the same. And so if Israel declares its illegal nukes, which then opens up the question of why they
It's
assassinated
never gonna
JFK to
happen,
instill them.
Simon.
No, I get it. I get it. I think this is a very contrarian view, and the probability is probably in your favor. But I'm taking a contrarian view here. I think the region is going to be a new regional power, and it requires a nuclear. Either both Iran and Israel, like they have to be held to the same standard, and then you can, and then I think that's the deal that, and there'll be a Palestinian state. I think global capital has decided that's more profitable than allowing for absolute World War III carnage because of the change in power structure with China and Russia aligning with Iran. So I think that's what I think is happening. But I get your argument. The other alternative is Israel gets its way, it goes to World War III, and Israel becomes the superpower of the region with its illegal nukes. But I
I
don't think
don't
it's as powerful as
necessarily
it
see
used to
this.
be.
I don't think it's binary like that. It's either they sign off on a deal or it's World War Three. I don't see that either. I see maybe them kicking the can down the road. Trump's given this 2 month deadline. I think he might extend it. And obviously, you can't impose any tariffs on Iran because, well, there's sanctions. You're not even allowed to trade with Iran, so it's not applicable. And people wonder, well, how come Russia doesn't have any sanctions on it? Because there's like 23,000 sanctions on Russia. You can't trade with them. So what tariff? If there's any trade happening, it's black market trade, which you're not even supposed to know about. But just going back to Iran very quickly, I just don't see Iran accepting a deal that's going to be favorable to it. The day that Trump decides to treat Iran and Israel the same is the day that Palestinians will get equal rights in Israel. Good luck with that. It's an apartheid state. So, I mean, if I'm Iran, I want the whole $100 billion back that's been frozen since the '80s, and all the interest, of course. I want to have autonomy on nuclear energy, and yeah, sure, I'll allow inspectors in. I wouldn't actually, because they're there to spy. They're not there to actually inspect anything, and I don't trust them either. Look what happened with Iraq. So I would never accept the Libyan model, nor would I end my missile program, nor would I give up any of my alliances. So how can a deal be made? Like, I just don't see it happening. Because those alliances are helpful to Iran as well, right? It keeps some level of balance. Obviously, it's not an equal balance because all the Gulf states, Egypt, Jordan, and of course Turkey are working for NATO essentially, and the U.S., Israel, etc. So if I'm Iran, you need your alliances. You can't give them up and just think that you're just going to be integrated into the fold. Even though they have a lot of value to offer, Iran does have a pretty good export economy beyond just, oil and gas and precious metals, minerals. They have a lot. They have, some say, between 30 to 40 trillion dollars of appraised assets. The U.S. knows about it, and American corporations want to get in there. It's the first thing they did when there was a nuclear deal in 2015. Boeing went in there to sell them both parts and new planes, and also, the oil and gas companies rushed in there to sign deals, but they had to cancel them all in 2017. So we know American corporations definitely want to be in Iran. Trump does so that's where Trump does have a challenge to deal with. You'll have to give them business elsewhere because I doubt he'll come up with a deal, but they'll kick the can down the road. And in the meantime, delay the onset of World War III for now. That's my expectation. No deal gets signed in the near future.
Yeah, because he keeps giving extensions
Uh,
on everything. You know, when you were in college
yeah.
and you always had that one professor who would always give you an extension, what did you start doing? You started handing
I
it
got
in
my work
late,
done on time.
anticipating that, right?
I didn't. I always
I
negotiated
got
with
my
mine on day one, and it
But
was always on the attendance policy. I'm like, look, I would meet with them after class, be like, look, I would introduce myself and be
Yeah,
like,
you're a
I
girl,
probably
uh,
Mace.
won't make
You've
this
got
attendance
female charm.
policy,
Doesn't work
but
that
yeah,
way
look,
with
yeah,
men.
yeah.
I did. I made deals. I
Sure.
guaranteed
Just
that
like
I
show
would
a little
get
cleavage to the
And
police
A's
officer
on
and
all
get out
my.
of a speeding
No, I
ticket.
would never. I didn't
okay,
have to
but you
show
had that
cleavage, man.
professor, right? You had that
Okay, guys,
professor who would
hold on
always
one
give you an
second. Let me just go through
extension.
this really quickly. Just so now, just really but quick back. We're gonna revert back to the taxes. The low income
Wait, I wanted
earners.
to make a point on that. The corporate
Oh,
tax rate
okay.
is
Hurry
not,
up.
yeah,
I have
the
a hard
corporate
stop in
tax
like
rate,
3 minutes.
the
So, okay,
corporate
go ahead.
tax rate is not 35%, it's not 21%. This is all propaganda. It's the effective tax rate for corporations is 8 to 9%. They don't need a tax cut. They don't need a tax cut. This is the uniparty. They kept Trump's tax cut from 35 to 21%. They kept it after Biden got elected, and they don't care. They're just thieves out in the open. They don't need another tax cut, but it just boosts up the stocks, just like how they played all the normies today. Oh, we're gonna put a tariff. Yeah, okay, keep
But
falling
you
for
know
it.
that's the thing. I didn't know that I'm gonna look into that. But I just
And yeah,
want
their
people to.
money's not in America. Their money's offshore.
Right. Okay, so the low income individuals from the last one in 2017, they experienced the most modest benefits. However, analysis indicates that these benefits diminished over time. By 2027, many in this group could see tax increases due to the expiration of certain provisions.
Mace, you saw
Now,
Trump's announcement an hour ago, right?
uh, which one?
He's frozen all tariffs for 90 days except on China.
Yeah, yeah, yep. Um, okay, and then the middle income earners households receive an average tax cut of approximately $1,000, translating to 1.3% increase after their tax income. And then the high income earners benefited significantly, both in absolute terms and in as a percentage of income. For instance, the top 1% of earners received an average tax cut of approximately $61,090 by 2025, equating to 2.9% increase in after-tax income. So anyway, I am just concerned about the people who are kind of really, really struggling to make ends meet. And I think, I do welcome, any like well, I'll have more spaces on this. Obviously, I want to definitely have one with you, Simon, about decentralization. Just kind of like zooming in on that. There's a lot of feedback, by the way. People really appreciate everything that you offer in terms of the light pill. You know what I'm saying? I call it the light pill. Not even the white pill, but I just want people to really wake up and use your discernment. It's so important. I mean, I don't even care about being cool and being a part of a crowd. I just want what's best for humanity, and I want us to be able to use our critical thinking and faculties, and not just buy into this whole like blind trust. Since when did we do that as truth seekers? When did we ever do that? I just think it's important to continue to use that critical thinking. But with that being said, I do see Paul up here, so I know he's always got a whole light pill moment for us as well. And then after that, I'm not taking any more hands after Paul. After we go to Paul, I'm going to go to Simon for final thoughts, and then we'll and Rance if you wanted to say anything, and then we'll shut down. Go ahead, Paul.
Well, I appreciate that. You said you have a hard stop, so I'm really going to diminish what I was going to say. Because look, and it's a disagreement really. So I respect Simon wholeheartedly on financial stuff. I respect Truth with understanding our history and a lot of things. And the only place where I deviate from a lot that I've heard, I'm just someone of faith. So because it hasn't been enough time, I just think there's so much going on and there's so many battles that are being fought on so many fronts that I'm not just going to assume the worst yet. And for that reason, I still have faith that Trump is America first. I don't think we're puppets to Israel. I understand all the facts of why it's thought that, but I do think that what we're doing right now is to fix all the corruption from within. I
You're
think we have a
literally
lot of
retarded,
ties.
dude. You're literally retarded.
That's hey, I didn't interrupt you,
Hey,
so don't
don't do
interrupt me.
that. Come
Yeah.
on,
I mean it
Ivy.
Yeah, and
literally.
that's
Come
fine.
on.
Okay, again, I didn't interrupt you. I've been quiet with my hand up,
Yeah, go
so
ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Don't
but
yeah,
don't
you
let
if
you
Ivy get.
deserve
Yeah,
to
he's
be
you can
welcome.
think
interrupted.
I'm
You
retarded,
Stop
but
deserve
you
to
it,
have
be
no
interrupted.
Ivy.
self-control clearly.
You
Your
deserve to be
self-control is
interrupted,
lacking.
bro.
You
You
know
If you can.
what? I'm gonna.
you still can't. Yeah, there you go. There you go. So that's
No,
what it
I'm
is.
just because I want the space to end on a positive note. I want people to leave here feeling higher vibrations than whatever. I understand it's heavy news, but we're not going to clown people and talk shit to them. That's
Yeah,
not.
I said I know I'm
So
in disagreement
I
with a
love
lot of
Ivy.
people. So
He's mean sometimes. So go ahead.
yeah, just well, no self-control. It's fine. They can learn that. They can come to the spiritual spaces and learn self-control and learn how to
Okay,
disagree
okay.
with
No,
people.
don't be talking shit while he's not on stage now, because then I got to bring him back up. So
Fair
just go
enough. And
ahead.
you got a hard stop coming. And like I said, I got respect for the intellectuals that are up here. I don't think anybody here is dumb, right? I think Truth is very intelligent. I think Simon is very intelligent. I'm just bringing the other side of this, that some of us, we still have faith. And I have faith that this is all going to end well for America. And I just think there's a lot that none of us on this space, or even anyone who's outside the inner circle of Donald Trump, understand, because we don't have all the facts. So anyway, I'm a man of faith. I still got faith in the leader of my country, and I hope and I know and I hope that he's going to come through for us. That includes Dan
Wait,
Bongino,
you have
by the
faith
way.
in
I got
Netanyahu?
No, I don't. I totally, I just think that we have a plan to get Israel out of the inner workings of our government, but we can't show our hand yet. I do think we're playing that kind of game. So yeah, I'm kind of in the 5D chess crowd, but I'm just gonna throw that out there. I still got faith.
Well, there is truth around the fact that our there's a lot of integrated overlap between our infrastructure, cybersecurity, critical infrastructures. So I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the plan would be for that, and I'm pretty sure it can't be disclosed. So I will lend you a little credibility there, and we'll see. Adele, did you have something quickly for close?
I just want to say, I don't think it matters if we agree or disagree on the finer points. I think what is important is that we buy local, support our local economies, make sure we're voting in local elections, and we're shoring up our communities. I think that that is the answer, regardless of how we get there. But yeah, so I'm super grateful for this space, and I appreciate everyone that's spoken. Maze, thank you so much for putting this together. Simon, thank you so much for putting out thought-provoking ideas, whether people agree or disagree.
You know what?
Mace,
Thank
by
you
the
so
way,
much, Adele. And this
real
is a
quick,
perfect setup for rants. Oh,
I
go
put
ahead.
up a link in the nest for a space I'm doing tomorrow. I'm interviewing three Americans in China to debunk some of the stereotypes on tech, trade, tariffs, life in China from the American perspective, in case anyone's interested. The names of the individuals are there as well. Thank you. If anyone's free, join.
Thanks, Truth. Okay, so Rance, over to you, the local level stuff. Go ahead and tell everybody about your expertise. I love Rance. Everybody should definitely give him a follow. He's the most underrated person who's very active on this app. Okay, love him to death. Go ahead, Rance.
Yeah, to fight back, it's not just enough for us to, vote. We got to get active in our policies too. Our local policies, state policies, city policies. This is where the fight is actually happening. They're banking little kingdoms all across the country right now. And if you don't fight back and take part of that kingdom, you're going to be the slave that works for that kingdom. And so get involved in your local level. And I would love to, sit down and talk with Simon more about how the carbon capturing and carbon control net zero energy policies across 27 different states are leading us into the social credit score system that will be the foundation for controlling us. And so I didn't, want to jump in and talk too much to this space because I was just listening and learning and understanding what different perspectives were coming. But I think they all coincide with energy policies that are taking place locally right now. And I did make a post. If anyone wants to check it out, Trump is actually doing, like Simon said, if Trump does some certain things, then I can say I'm wrong. And at first, I'm like, I was really upset because Trump wasn't pushing really hard on some different ESG policies, but he just passed the resilient grid. Stop to bring plants back up and reliable energy, and that's what these states needed. The next thing we need to do is call on our Congress to have them repeal the Inflation Reduction Act. Okay, this is where the scam is coming from. This is what's funding this whole process. And if we can get Congress to repeal it, we don't have to worry about all the court cases that we're currently losing with what you see Doge losing in court when all they're saving stuff, but then they're getting told in court they can't spend this money. And, it all sort of ties together and wraps around in a circle. But I appreciate Simon. Thank you for sharing and coming in, and Maze and everybody, and let me co-host. And I appreciate you guys. Thanks.
My pleasure. Thank you, Rance. Simon, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate a few things that I've already said. It really doesn't matter whether Trump is the savior or not. The most important thing is follow the money and figure out what's happening. And look where Trump is repositioning his portfolio, whether he's doing it for good, bad, doesn't matter. What really matters is that if you follow the general trend, and I really suggest if you came halfway through, go back to the beginning of this space. And after a big rant and a story, I just went through what solutions are. And in those solutions, even if you disagree with absolutely everything, just follow those solutions, and I think you're going to be okay. There is a massively changing world right now. And if you get on the wrong side of it, I am fearful for you. You will end up on a universal basic income and controlled by a social credit score. If you change your habits and recognize where the world's going, economic power is what allows you to implement the changes that are more spiritual in the world. But unfortunately, the only way you're going to be able to implement them is if you put yourself in a position of economic power, because the other system's going to make you weak. The other system's going to make you a debt slave. And when we're in a debt slavery mindset and weak, we don't do our best work. We don't have our best relationship with God. We compromise our values. We do things that are not in line with us, and that creates psychological disorders, mental disorders. We don't have children. We don't recreate. We don't have families. We become the worst version of ourselves. And so economic power is important so that you can influence spiritual power. And so I encourage everybody, if you can, and I'll reiterate them, the world is changing around artificial intelligence and robotics. Some regions are going to shrink, others are going to expand. And rather than you becoming a speculator and try and think, should I have my money in America? Should I have my money in the Middle East? Should I have my money in China? Do what the central banks are doing right now. The central banks are accumulating gold. Everyone in the Trump administration is accumulating Bitcoin. And those are global neutral assets. Don't expect to make currency trading and go down, try and get too smart in the market. Try wherever you can to avoid debt. That is a boycott of the machine. The machine relies upon you being in debt. Save in Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a peaceful, whether the price goes up or down, it is a peaceful resistance of the system. Every fiat currency converted into Bitcoin and existing outside of the system drains the system and is a boycott against the war machine. And finally, work local and work in the regions. Spend your money local. Don't allow BlackRock to decide what you're investing in, because if you allow BlackRock to decide, you're investing in genocide and the destruction of humanity. Invest where you think is right. Invest local. Support your community wherever you can, and you decide how you flow your money in line with your ethics, not somebody else's ethics. And recognize that while this is absolute carnage and chaos, study the AI and robotics ecosystem from start to finish. It starts with energy and it ends with technology, and study it right from beginning to end and recognize wherever you are in the world, if you're aligning with that, you're in the boom market wherever you are. Whether you're in America, whether you're in China, whether you're in the Middle East, wherever you are, there is, a that is where the whole economy is repositioning it to. You could be a manual labor working in energy. You could be a developer or a coder, or you could be somebody that is in the complete wrong area and just says, you know what, for 3 months, I'm going to tune out of all politics. I'm not going to attend one space. I'm not even going to listen to Simon, Truth, or Mays, or any of these crazy people. I'm going to get my head down and I'm going to learn everything I can about artificial intelligence. And I'm going to support my local businesses in transitioning to this new world. Reskill yourself. And remember, you've got approximately 5 to 10 years to build economic power. Think long term, and you'll be fine at the very end of it. I don't know what the world's going to look like in 10 years, but I do know that there is a mountain of opportunity to support people in in switching themselves to this new world. And if you've got skills, you can help people with mental strength, you can help people with spiritual strength, you can help people with any of these things. The world needs productive people, and we need to build decentralization to fight back against the machine. And I do believe in our creator. I do believe we win. And I do believe that there is a demonic force that we will win against. And whether you call that karma, whether you call that God in whatever particular iteration or religion you believe, whether you call that faith in humanity, just tap into that. Take the time out if you're not feeling mentally strong. Reskill yourself, look after yourself, because the community needs strong people like you and leaders that are going to make a difference.
Absolutely. That's the kind of energy and vibe that I'm on. I am definitely looking forward to doing more spaces with Simon. You are a gem. Thank you so much for sharing your information with us. I mean, it was so last minute, and for you to agree to come in here and do this was just very, very. Very grateful. Words are inadequate to express my gratitude for you. And we'll do another space on decentralization. So just be on the lookout for that, guys. Just kind of more action type of items for people as they navigate these times. And yeah, and thanks to all the speakers and everybody that listened and everybody that shared this. And until the next time, I hope you guys have an amazing day. Thank you.